A healthier version of me. Book 7 of the Destiny Clark Saga. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Text, copyright 2019 by Cindy Ray Hale. Production copyright 2024 by Cindy Ray Hale.
Chapter 1, Isaac. Even though our relationship had caused a lot of trouble, every second I'd spent with Destiny had been worth it. She sat across from me in my truck, her brown hair falling in curls around her shoulders. I flinched, remembering the way she'd been treated tonight at the banquet, and I felt responsible. But I would do anything to make it right. You really are beautiful. You know that, right? Destiny smiled and leaned across the empty space between us. I kissed her soft lips and my feelings for her overwhelmed me. Fury raged as I thought about the unfairness of what my dad and our school had done to plot against Destiny and her family. What is it? Destiny said, pulling away from me. I can't stop thinking about the doctrinal statement. It's seriously so messed up. I know, Destiny said in a quiet voice. I'm upset, too. I looked over at her and saw the worry on her face. I tucked a curl behind her ear. I'm sorry this is happening. It's not your fault, she said. I know you told Michael that you felt responsible, but you can't take the blame for what other people decided to do. I let out a puff of air. Do you mind if I do something? I asked. What is it? Can I come inside and talk to your parents? Even though the school board chose to do what they did, I was still involved. I should be the one to explain and apologize in person. Of course you can, she said. I think that's a good idea. Okay. Are you ready to go inside? I asked. She nodded. We walked up the sidewalk to her family's front door. Neither of us spoke, each of us lost in our own thoughts. As we rounded the bend in the sidewalk, Destiny took in a sharp breath and froze in place, mouth dropped open. I followed her gaze to the front porch to see her older brother Michael, embracing Megan, the girl he'd brought to the Valentine's banquet. Their noses touched, and he leaned in to kiss her. I hadn't realized they were anything more than friends, and it definitely seemed to be a shock to Destiny. I chuckled to myself. Well, wasn't this awkward? What do we do? Destiny hissed, her eyes wide. I gave a loud cough, and Megan and Michael sprung apart. Hey, guys, I called out, unable to keep a grin off my face as we approached. Michael gaped at me, and Megan fiddled with the corsage around her wrist. Don't mind us, I said. They parted to allow Destiny and me to pass to the front door. She opened the door, leaving Michael and Megan on the porch behind us. As I reached to close the door, Michael said, Wait, we're coming inside, too. Mom. Destiny called. Dad. Her parents emerged from the kitchen. I looked them levelly in the eyes. We need to talk with you. Mrs. Clark's brow furrowed with worry. Is everything okay? She led us into the formal living room. Destiny told me it was where they took her when they needed to have a serious, private conversation with one of their kids. I sat next to Destiny on the couch, and Michael and Megan squeezed in next to us, with the girls sitting side by side in the middle. Mr. and Mrs. Clark took the two armchairs facing us. I could see how this might be intimidating for Destiny. It felt like an interrogation set up. I took a deep breath before beginning. Tonight, at the banquet, Will Green presented me with a document that all Bethel students will be required to sign if they want to remain at the school. Mr. Clark's eyes held mine with a steadiness I refused to shrink back from. What kind of document? He asked. It was a doctrinal statement. I pushed forward, praying that they wouldn't throw me out of their house after they heard what I was about to explain. I don't have a copy of it with me, but basically, it's a list of everything we believe at Bethel. Go on, Mr. Clark said, his eyes darkening. I straightened my back and pushed on with the explanation. It talks about the Trinity and the belief that the Bible is the only Word of God. What? Mrs. Clark asked in a strangled voice. And, I said, pressing my lips together for a second before going on. It lists all the books that aren't considered to be the Word of God. I plowed forward with the list, including the Quran, the writings of Ellen G. White, and the Book of Mormon. Mrs. Clark covered her mouth with both hands. Michael got up and knelt beside her chair, placing a hand of comfort on her back. "Why?" she choked. "I don't understand." "It's because of us," Destiny said. "I think this is Dr. Robinson's way of punishing me for dating Isaac." Michael shook his head. "I don't think it's that. I think he's trying to protect the student body from getting converted to another religion. I was the one who told my dad that I'd been going to church with Destiny. We've set a precedent, and now we've ruined it for everyone." "You haven't ruined anything," Mr. Clark said, surprising me. "It's their choice to write this doctrinal statement. It sounds like your dad let his emotions get control of him again. He isn't thinking straight. I've known your dad for years. We'll get this fixed." "Ben," Destiny's mom said. "We can get your parents involved, too. They've been members of Bethel since before the Robinsons." "I'm not so sure it will be that easy," I said, shaking my head. "Will said the school board has been putting together the doctrinal statement all year." "Do you know when they plan to implement it?" Mrs. Clark asked. "I'm not sure. My guess would be at the beginning of next year." "Does this mean that you're going to stop going to church with Destiny?" Megan asked. I leaned past Destiny to meet Megan's eye. "Nope. I'll be there tomorrow morning." I nudged Destiny. "Be sure to save a seat for me." "Of course, I will," Destiny said. Mrs. Clark took in our exchange. "Isaac, I've misjudged you. You really are an incredibly good young man. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better." "Thank you. I appreciate that." My eyes flicked over to Destiny's dad. His face was pensive and otherwise unreadable. Megan stood. "I should probably get home." Michael stood from his kneeling position next to his mom. "Thanks for coming over with me." Destiny cocked her head to the side. "Why did you come over, Megan?" "Michael was upset about the doctrinal statement, and he asked me to come with him to tell your parents." "This all my fault," Destiny said. "Will everyone quit blaming themselves?" Megan said. "You guys are going to get through this. Anyway, would it be the worst thing in the world for you to go to school with me at Acorn Creek High next year?" Destiny shrugged. "Bethel's the only school I've ever known. It's like home, you know." "Well, talk later," Megan said. "Ready to go, Michael?" I stood, straightening my tux jacket. "I should let you guys get back to your night." Destiny followed me to the front door, and after I'd stepped over the threshold, I turned back around to see her leaning her cheek against the open door. Although her makeup had worn off a bit and shadows of circles sat under her eyes, she still looked radiant. How had I gotten so lucky? If her parents weren't sitting right there, watching everything she was doing, I'd take her in my arms and show her every emotion I felt at that moment. She closed the door with a look of longing on her face, which only made me ache to wrap her in my arms even more. As I drove home, the night played through my mind like a bad dream. Aspen telling my dad that Destiny was pregnant with my child. Destiny having to go through the embarrassment of taking a pregnancy test. The look of horror and guilt on Hannah's face when she found out that Destiny had been taking the blame for weeks to protect Hannah's secret. Green gloating in our faces as he showed us the doctrinal statement. Why did he have to be such a self-righteous punk all the time? The dude had a serious issue, and I was sick of it. And Aspen's snotty attitude was too much to take. What if Aspen was right, and I had gotten Destiny pregnant? How would it be okay for her to treat Destiny like that? Would she treat Hannah the same way if she found out the truth about her pregnancy? How could I have dated Aspen for so long without seeing this side of her? The entire time we dated, she'd been as sweet as pie. But now it was like she'd been eaten up by jealousy, and it had turned her into this angry person who I couldn't stand to be around. It wasn't like Dad was any better. How could he treat Destiny like she had somehow tarnished our family name? Why couldn't he just be kind and loving? I got it that he didn't want me to go to hell or be sucked into Destiny's religion, but did that mean he had to be straight up rude and judgmental? Coming out with the doctrinal statement was taking it too far. It was one thing for him to ground me or tell me that I couldn't date Destiny, but it was another thing entirely for him to punish her entire family. I pulled my truck into the driveway and stalked into the house. I found Dad sitting on the couch in the front room, reading the paper in his bathrobe. Just the sight of him reminded me of how much he'd hurt Destiny. I slammed the door behind me. "So, I heard about the doctrinal statement," I said, acid dripping from my words. "When were you planning to tell me about that?" Dad folded his paper and looked at me with an even expression on his face. "The doctrinal statement was officially formed this last Thursday. I didn't think it applied to you. Should it?" I started back at him. "Of course, it applies to me. My girlfriend and her family are basically getting thrown out of the only school they've ever gone to, and that's supposed to just be okay somehow. Isaac, Destiny is going to be out of your life soon. You're going to graduate in a few months and move on to college. You think I'm just going to forget about her?" He gave me a condescending look. "You're young. I know this may seem like a huge deal to you now, but the Clarks aren't your concern. You have enough on your plate as it is. Focus on what really matters. This does matter. How is it okay for our school to turn into this kind of place?" "What do you mean by that?" "This cold, exclusive environment where we only allow people just like us to be in our special club. The doctrinal statement is for the protection of our students." This was total garbage. I stared back at Dad. He had fully convinced himself that he was doing the right thing. Fighting against him was going to be a waste of breath. At least tonight. Somehow, I'd have to get him to see how wrong his stance was. "You feel like I'm in some sort of danger? Like Destiny's harmed my salvation somehow? Well, you're wrong. My walk with God is just as strong as it was before. She's a good person. If you took the time to actually get to know her, you'd see that for yourself." I didn't know why I was wasting my breath. It wasn't like he was going to listen. He was always so sure he was right. "We've been over this enough times for you to know how I feel about you dating Destiny. It's clear that you don't care about the rules of our household. I can take your keys and your phone, but ultimately, you're going to do what you choose to do. You're 18 now and I can't stop you from dating her, but I hope at least that you listen to what I have to say. I think you owe me that courtesy as my son and as someone living under my roof, eating the food I provide for you. Be careful, stay close to God." Relief and surprise welled through me. I didn't think he'd be so cool with me dating Destiny. I was half expecting him to take my truck and phone away from me again. Maybe he was just so relieved I hadn't gotten her pregnant that he'd decided to lighten up a bit on me. I'm always careful. And I always stay close to God. I would have hoped that you already knew that about me. It hurt that you believed that Aspen's story had any sort of credibility. I thought you knew that I've made a promise to myself and God that I won't have sex before marriage. There are a lot of things about you I don't know anymore, Isaac. You've changed so much your senior year that I hardly know you. You're right. You hardly do know me. And I have changed. I've changed for the better. I like the person I'm becoming. And a lot of that is because of Destiny. She brings out the best in me. I want to be a better, kinder person when I'm around her. I'm glad that she's a kind person. I don't doubt that, but there are bigger things involved than just kindness, son." Again, I wondered why I was bothering to talk about this with him. He didn't understand, and I doubted he would believe me if I tried to explain it any better. "I'm tired, Dad. I think I'm going to head to bed." I turned to head up the staircase. "Isaac," Dad stopped me. I turned around to face him. I just want what's best for you. My shoulders slumped. I know, I said as I trudged up the stairs.
Chapter 2, Destiny. Isaac showed up to church only a few minutes after my family did. We'd already taken our customary row behind the Nelsons. Preston glanced up from the front of the room where he sat next to Michael, behind the sacrament table. They were blessing the sacrament again today. My eyes followed Isaac as he walked into the room, and I didn't miss the cloud of pain that crossed his features. My heart tightened in my chest. I still regretted how everything ended up with Preston. Thinking about the way I treated him and the pain I put him through hung over me on a daily basis. I'd broken his heart, and honestly, I'd broken a piece of my own as well. Isaac sat in the spot I'd promised I'd have reserved for him. "Hey," he breathed. "You look beautiful," he said, taking in my smooth, shiny flat-ironed look. "Thanks. You look nice, too." And he did. He wore a slim-fit white dress shirt and a skinny navy tie. His shirt fit across his shoulders and arms in all the right places. His dark brown hair was utter perfection, and my fingers itched to run through it. Isaac had the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. Before we'd gotten together, I'd crushed on him for years, because of that smile alone. Even today, it made butterflies dance in my tummy. I was so lucky to have him. I looked back to Preston and saw him staring down at his hands. His head was bowed, but I could still see the frown covering his features. Why did this have to be so hard? I hated it that I had to lose my friendship with Preston because I'd found happiness with Isaac. But it was too much to ask for me to expect Preston to just be okay with me dating the guy I'd cheated on him with. I wanted to say I regretted that moment, but I wasn't sure that I'd have gotten together with Isaac if it hadn't happened. I was supposed to regret it. I should feel remorse for doing something so terrible. I hated it that Preston had to be a casualty of my indecision. Maybe I shouldn't have dated Preston in the first place. Maybe I should have just given Isaac the chance to explain himself before I broke things off so quickly with him last November. But everything had hurt so much. I was stupid. I should have let him speak to me. He would have explained everything, and then Preston wouldn't have had to have been hurt. But as I thought over the months I'd spent with Preston, I came to realize that I didn't regret a single moment we'd had together. It had been beautiful. Every kiss. Him climbing up the rope like Rapunzel's Prince Charming to rescue me. Those were memories I'd have forever, and they were precious to me. No, I wouldn't have changed the way things had happened. I watched him lift his head and meet my gaze from across the room, and I wondered if he would have changed it. If he wished we had never had those moments together. It would have spared him the pain. But he wouldn't have had the opportunity to build memories either. And so many of those memories were incredible. His eyes bore into mine, and something changed in his face I couldn't read. Later that night, Grandmama and Granddaddy came over. It had been a while since I'd seen them. Grandmama wrapped me in a tight hug, and I breathed in her scent. She always smelled like cookies baking. I followed Mom and Dad to the family room, where all the kids sat down together with our grandparents. Granddaddy spoke first. "I understand that the Bethel School Board has come out with something called a doctrinal statement that all of you will have to sign." He pulled out a sheet of paper and put on his reading glasses. "I can't help but think that this document has been specifically crafted as a blow to this family." He peered at us over his glasses. "How many of you are aware of what this document says?" "Only Destiny and Michael know so far," Mom said. "What's he talking about, Mom?" Olivia said. "The school board has decided that every student has to sign this paper that says that we have to believe everything on their list of doctrines." "But what if we don't want to sign it?" Elijah asked. "Then you will be asked to leave the school," Michael said, his voice hard. "I don't want to go to a new school." "What about all my friends?" Brianna wailed. Anger tore through me as I watched tears pour down her now red cheeks. No one should ask this of an 8-year-old. "Where would we go to school?" Elijah asked. You would probably start 6th grade at Acorn Creek Middle next year, Olivia said, with a dark look on her face. And we don't get any choice? Elijah demanded. Nope, Olivia said. Unless you plan to sign that piece of crap paper. Olivia, watch your mouth, Mom said. Can I read it, Granddaddy? She asked, getting up from her cross-legged position on the floor. He handed her the paper, and her mouth fell open as she scanned the document. They really are targeting us. Her eyes moved to me and narrowed. I looked down into my lap. If Olivia was going to blame me for this, I couldn't say anything to defend myself. Because I was to blame. If I hadn't decided to openly date Isaac, my family wouldn't be getting thrown out of the school. I'd crossed the line, pushed Dr. Robinson too hard. And I was responsible for those tears running down Brianna's face. I'd been selfish, and now my family was going to have to suffer. Maybe it really had been a mistake to go back to dating Isaac. If I'd stayed with Preston, Dr. Robinson probably would have backed off. Isaac would have eventually gotten the message from me, and he would have found someone else. Can I see it? Elijah asked. Olivia handed him the paper. They're talking about the Book of Mormon in here. Yes, they are, Granddaddy said. Is there anything you can do to convince them to take it back? Elijah asked. I am meeting with Dr. Green and Dr. Robinson for lunch this week, and I plan to speak on the behalf of this family. I have known them both for over 20 years. I was able to get them to keep you in the school when you converted. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to convince them to allow you to stay now. Or at the very least allow an exception for your family since you've been at the school for over 12 years. I bit back a scoff. Granddaddy probably had no idea about my relationship with Isaac. He'd be walking into that lunch blindly. Unless I told him the truth. My mind recoiled at the idea, but one glance at Brianna's tear-stained face urged me forward. This is all because of me, I said. Nonsense, Granddaddy scoffed. Let her speak her piece, Earl. What do you mean, dear? Grandmama asked. I've caused a lot of trouble this year, and it's made Dr. Robinson really mad. What sort of trouble? Granddaddy asked, peering at me from over his reading glasses. I licked my lips and wiped my clammy palms on the knees of my jeans. I'm dating his son. You mean his older boy, Isaac? Granddaddy asked. Yes, sir. Last time I checked, it took 2 people to decide they're in a relationship, Granddaddy said. So, unless you pulled a mind trick on Stephen's boy, I'd say it's not all because of you. Isaac's father and the school board made the decision, and it was probably something they'd been talking about since long before your romance began, Grandmama said. That does make sense, actually, I said. When Will Green showed us the doctrinal statement at the Valentine's banquet, he said it was something they'd been working on all year. Don't forget that Dr. Robinson has been trying to get us out of the school since his first day on the job as Bethel's headmaster, Michael pointed out. Not to mention Will Green, Olivia said. He's always acted like we don't belong. I can't tell you how disheartening that is for me to hear, Granddaddy said. It sounds like this battle may be harder than I first anticipated. Grandmama wiped away a tear. This just breaks my heart. To see the leaders of our Christian school forget how to love others is a major problem. Where is the love in this doctrinal statement? I will give you my word that I will do my very best to speak for you all. I've watched my grandchildren grow into better people because of years of studying the Bible at Bethel. It was true. I knew the Bible backward and forward because, for as long as I could remember, I'd been sitting in Bethel, whether as a toddler in Sunday school or an elementary school student, studying the Bible. I'd memorized countless Bible verses over the years. And I loved all of it. After we converted, it was a little hard sometimes when they taught things that went against what I learned at my own church, but overall, I enjoyed learning the stories and principles I learned from Bible class. It was part of me. I'd become this person who was a hybrid of Baptist and Mormon. I knew both faiths inside and out, and I was a better person because of it. I was stronger in my own faith and had compassion and understanding for the way my Baptist friends believed.
Chapter 3, Isaac. I drove Destiny from seminary to Bethel on Monday morning. We had a little bit of time between seminary and school, so we stopped by the gas station across from school and grabbed hot chocolate. I honestly wanted a coffee, but I thought it might make Destiny uncomfortable. "How'd it go with your grandparents last night?" I asked, stepping out of the convenience store. "It was hard." "What made it so hard?" I asked, gently probing. "None of the younger kids knew about the doctrinal statement," she said, her eyes trained on the cracked cement of the parking lot as we walked toward my truck. "How'd they take it?" I asked. "Not well," Destiny said, still not meeting my eye. "Are you okay talking about this?" "It's fine." "What are you feeling?" She bit her lip and clutched her hot chocolate as I opened her door for her. She climbed into the truck and waited until I was sitting behind the wheel to answer. "I feel responsible. I know your dad and the school board made their own choices, but I can't shake the feeling that I contributed to their decision." "I know what you mean. I feel the same way." She looked up at me, her crystal blue eyes filling with tears. "What do we do?" "We fight against them." "How?" "I don't have it all figured out yet, but I started working on my dad last night. Maybe if he gets to actually know you, he'll back off." I studied Destiny's face, but she kept her expression blank. "Is that something you're okay with?" "I'm not sure it's a good idea." "What if it just backfires, and we both just end up getting hurt worse?" "Are you scared of my dad?" She turned and stared out the window. "I'm going to take that as a yes." She sighed but continued to stare out the window. "I'm sorry my dad hasn't been very nice to you." "What am I saying?" "He's been completely awful to you." "But I'm in love with you, Destiny. Eventually, he's just going to have to accept that you're part of my life now." She turned to me, this time with hope in her eyes. "I love you, too, Isaac," she whispered. She reached up and touched my cheek, rubbing her thumb across the apple of my cheek. I shuddered. "That feels amazing." She slid her hand to the back of my neck and pulled me toward her. I kissed her hungrily, hoping to show her how serious I was about keeping her around. She pulled away, the edges of her mouth curled upward. We drove to the school and walked into the building together. We walked to her locker, my fingers intertwined with hers. I didn't care who saw. I was done with letting other people run my life, forcing me to hide my feelings. As Destiny twirled her combination, I spotted Hannah walking toward us. Her hair was twisted up into a messy bun and she wore less makeup than usual. "Morning, Hannah," I said. "Morning," she mumbled. "Rough morning?" I asked. "You know. I think I have food poisoning or something," she said, bitter sarcasm dripping from her words. "Hannah, you should probably lower your voice," Destiny said. "I'm just so tired of feeling tired all the time," she said. "And puking my guts up every morning." At least she'd bother drop her volume. "And Evan just gets to walk away whenever he feels like," I muttered, turning toward them to keep my voice pointed away from eavesdroppers. Thinking about it made me want to punch the guy in the face. Hard. "It's not his fault that he's a guy. It's kind of how it works," Hannah said. "I can't believe you're actually defending him," I said. "He's my boyfriend," she said. "I'm not sure why that's still the case," I said. "It's none of your business, Isaac." Hannah slammed her locker shut and walked into the crowd. "What's with her?" I asked. Destiny shut her locker and gave me a wry smile. "It's called hormones. I hate to say this, but I have to get to my locker before I'm late to class," I said, leaning against the row of lockers. "I'll see you at lunch though." She stared up at me, her eyes begging me to kiss her. Fighting the urge was nearly impossible, but kissing her openly in the hallway probably wasn't the best idea. Instead, I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a side of my mouth tugging up. I backed away reluctantly before turning around and joining the sea of students flowing down the hall. Evan sat at our table during lunch with Hannah, but the tension between them was palpable. "Destiny, when's the next time you're playing paintball?" Hudson asked. "We haven't played in a while, maybe we can once it starts warming up in March," she said. I thought back to the first time we played paintball. It was the day of our first kiss, and the most amazing kiss I'd had up until that point. I'd been holding back so long that when I finally went for it, I went crazy. The chemistry I felt with Destiny was off the charts. I'd never felt the same pull to be with someone. Before Aspen, I'd had 2 other girlfriends, and I'd kissed a few girls here and there. Up until I kissed Destiny, Aspen was the most serious I'd ever gotten with a girl. "You in, Isaac?" Hudson asked. "Huh?" "For paintball," he said. "Oh. When is it?" "Talk about zoned out," Hannah said. "We're thinking about playing the first weekend in March," Destiny said. "That should work for me," I said. "Sweet," Hudson said. "We'll have to get more games set up as it gets warmer," Destiny said. "We have this small window before the bugs and poison ivy get too bad. Our woods are usually covered with ticks by mid-April." "Ticks?" Shanice said. "Y'all are crazy if you ask me. I don't see why you like running through the woods getting shot at so much. You didn't seem to mind the woods so much when we were sneaking out to spy on the guys' cabins at the retreat," Hannah said. "You snuck out at the retreat?" Evan asked. "Everyone knows about that," Shanice said. I looked around the table. It was true. Even Deshaun had this wide grin on his face like he was reliving a memory. I'd known they'd snuck out because Will Green had caught them outside our cabin. It was when I found out that Destiny liked me. Before that I hadn't really noticed her too much other than the fact that she was Michael's younger sister who had gotten hotter as she'd grown older. Green had told me that Destiny had just made friends with my rebellious cousin who'd just come to Bethel to reform after causing trouble at Acorn Creek High. But Hannah had only found a new way to rebel by becoming friends with the Mormon girl and getting super curious about her religion. It had scared the crap out of me back then. All my life I'd been taught that Mormons believed in a different Jesus and therefore were going to hell since they couldn't be actually saved. I was convinced that Destiny was dragging Hannah to hell with her. So Green came up with this plan. He said I could use Destiny's crush to my advantage and lure her in, get her to trust me enough to let me in on her world so I could dig up enough dirt on the Mormons to get them kicked out of the school once and for all. At first it all seemed to be going perfectly. Destiny got into Primus and ended up sitting 2 chairs down from me. I'd thought about asking my little brother Josh to swap me places, but Mr. Bird is pretty strict with his seating charts and wouldn't have allowed it. So I went out of my way to gain her trust. I made sure I showed up for work at my aunt's house when I knew Destiny would be over there hanging out with Hannah. And then we were cast together as Marius and Eponine in the Primus production of Les Miserables we'd been working on all year long. As I spent more time with her my attraction to her grew and the chemistry between us drew me to her like a magnet. I didn't see it fully until it was too late. I'd gotten hooked and found her sneaking into my thoughts all the time. After that it was only a matter of time before we were together. Looking back on it now, I realized that I started dating her too fast after I'd caught Aspen cheating on me when I found her sucking face with my best friend, Green. I looked across the cafeteria. Green was sitting at my old table with all my old friends with Jessie Larson, this red-headed cheerleader who used to hang out with Destiny a lot when they were younger. They'd started dating not too long after I'd broken up with Aspen. Aspen wasn't sitting with them either. She was across the room, sitting with the rest of the cheerleaders. It was strange to look back on how much had changed this year. I'd been sitting with Green at lunch every day since 6th grade. Back in August I never would have imagined that I'd be sitting at Destiny's table every day. But it was a good place to be. I liked Destiny's friends. They were genuine and loyal. Except Evan. I still wanted to punch him in the face for what he did to Hannah. I glanced back at my old table and saw Green and Jesse sneak a kiss. I couldn't help but wonder if he'd convinced her to do drugs with him like he had with Aspen. An old spark of leftover anger lit a flame in my chest. How many more girls did he plan on corrupting? Whatever happened to the idea of being a Southern gentleman? I was old-fashioned like that. I believed in treating girls with respect, and waiting until marriage to have sex. I didn't care if that made me weird, or if people thought I was a loser. It was part of me. After lunch we walked as a group to Primus. When Evan took a side trip to the bathroom and left the group, I said, "I don't understand why you're staying with him, Hannah." The guy told her he wanted her to get an abortion. Hannah had fought him on it and told him she wanted to put the baby up for adoption. "I don't understand why he's staying with me," Hannah answered. "Shouldn't that count for something?" I hadn't thought of it that way. Did Evan have a bit of honor to him after all? Have you ever considered that maybe Evan's just fighting for what he knows is right in his heart even when his mind is telling him to run away? Hannah said, and Destiny's mouth fell open. I stopped in front of the door to the choir room and looked Hannah in the eye. "But does he make you happy?" I asked. "Because you don't look happy when you're with him." She tore her eyes away from my gaze. "You don't understand. I know you're under a lot of stress right now. I just think you deserve to be happy." Her eyes flashed back to mine and the words that came from her mouth tore through me. "There's not much to be happy about right now, Isaac." "What about Primus?" Her eyes softened. "Except Primus. It really is the best part of my life right now." "I like the sound of that," Mr. Bird said as we walked into the room. We took our seats. Destiny one seat down from me in the alto section. Josh showed up just before class started and sat between us, on the edge of the tenor section. "Sup, Destiny," he said. "Hey, Josh." I cocked an eyebrow. It was the friendliest I'd ever seen them be to each other. Unless he was planning to start something with her again. "What?" he said, noting my expression. "Nothing. I'm just trying to be nice. There's a first time for everything, I guess." He punched me in the arm. "Ah, there's the Josh we all know and love." The bell rang, and Mr. Bird quieted the room. "Before we get started today, I have some news. We have been invited to participate in the Middle Tennessee Choral Festival in Nashville this April. With the opening night of Les Miserables the first week of May, it will be a little tight with rehearsals, so we will have to work extra hard to be able to work this trip into our schedule. This is an excellent opportunity for us, and I feel that despite our rehearsal schedule it's something we won't want to miss. The competition itself will be held at the Opryland Hotel. We'll be taking the bus up and spending the night up there. After class be sure to grab a permission slip from the table up front. Those will be due back the Monday after spring break, which I believe is March 21st. Aspen raised her hand. "Yes, Aspen. Do you know what we'll be singing, yet?" "We'll be performing a Les Mis medley with soloists and some of our standby pieces like Samuel Barber's, Agnes Day, and probably a John Rutter. In fact, I'd like to get started on the Les Mis medley today." He pulled out a stack of music and began passing it out to the ends of the rows for us to pass to the middle. I flipped through the music to see how much I'd be expected to sing. It looked like they had snippets from the main songs that eventually tied into a full rendition of One Day More. Destiny and I would get to sing a portion of A Little Fall of Rain. "So will we get to act this out or are we just singing at microphones?" Hannah asked. "This time we'll be sticking to the microphones, but we still want to show a theatrical edge since that's a strength that we've developed as a choir." I flipped through the booklet some more and found a section where I'd have to sing A Heart Full of Love with Aspen. I held back a groan. It had been a few weeks since we'd performed it together. I'd been mostly working on the songs I sang with the guys like Red and Black and Drink With Me. Maybe Mr. Bird would let us just sing our solos from our regular spots in the choir. At least for today. With Aspen on the other side of the room as a first soprano, I didn't have to interact with her much in Primus unless we were rehearsing. But who was I kidding? It wasn't like I could escape Aspen. Even outside of rehearsals I saw her all the time. We had student body government meetings together, and she was in most of my classes. I ignored her as much as I could. It was tough on stage though. I hated pretending to be in love with her. Even when Destiny and I had broken up, it was still awkward, but now it would be much worse. Can I get all of our soloists up front? Mr. Bird had it out for me today. I filtered through the other choir members and stepped down from my seat on the second row. I stood between the other guys, but then Aspen stood between Michael and me. Of course she would. It made sense since she sang most of her songs with either Michael or me. Destiny stood on the other side of me. I wanted to reach down and take her hand, but I only swept the back of my hand against hers. I imagined the small smile she probably had on her face. Hannah joined us, her face radiant. She was in her element. Hannah lived to sing, especially as a soloist in a musical. Michael began the medley, his strong tenor voice carrying Jean Valjean's notes with vibrant emotion. Hannah followed, her voice also full of emotion, but broken as Fantine's should. Ever since she discovered her pregnancy, her performance as Fantine felt heavier, more genuine. Because she wasn't just a carefree teen anymore. She carried a child inside her, and it left a mark on her that would never be erased. When it was time for me to sing with Aspen, I focused on my acting, detaching myself from reality. I put myself into character as much as I could. The last thing I needed was my voice sounding fake while singing a love song with my ex. When it came time for me to sing with Destiny, my stress levels had dropped significantly. I allowed the music to wrap around us as we sang together, our voices blending like they were made to sing together. The choir filled in a few places where we transitioned between soloists. We ended with "One Day More," one of my personal favorites. When Primus was over, Hannah and Evan walked out together, seeming closer than ever. Whatever tension had been between them during lunch had disappeared, and I couldn't help wonder if I was the one to have pushed them together by challenging Hannah about being with him. What was Bellingham's deal? Was he really in this for Hannah? Or did he feel obligated to stay with her because someone had guilted him into it? As far as I knew, he'd only talked to Hannah about her pregnancy. As I followed them out into the hall, I saw her hug him before heading in the opposite direction for her next class, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my belly.
Chapter 4, Destiny. Mom dropped Michael, Olivia, and me off at the church Wednesday night. She stayed at church with Elijah and Brianna, who had meetings there, but all the youth were meeting in the parking lot and then traveling over to the skating rink. Acorn Creek had just gotten a skating rink, and I hadn't gotten the chance to try it out yet, so I was pretty excited about tonight. I climbed into the Nelsons' minivan with Olivia and Michael. Preston's dad was over the young men at church, so he was helping to drive. Michael slid into the back with Preston and Megan. Preston was sitting in the middle, and Michael said, "Hey dude, would you mind switching me?" Preston opened and then shut his mouth like he was going to say something, and then thought better of it. He got up without a word and let Michael take his place. Olivia and I sat on the middle bench, and she turned to me with her eyebrows raised. We'd never seen Michael date anyone before, and while Megan wasn't a bad choice for him, we hadn't seen it coming. "Where's Isaac, Destiny?" Megan asked. "He had to work at his aunt's tonight." An awkward silence settled over the van. Brinley and her dad opened the front doors of the minivan and climbed inside. Brother Nelson turned around and said, "Who's ready for some ice skating?" "I am," Megan said, her voice more chipper than normal. She was usually the quiet, serious type, while Brinley was the bubblier one. "Only Brinley?" "Dad." "I'm up here," Brinley said. "Oh," he said, turning around to see Megan sitting next to Michael in the back. If he knew anything about them dating or seemed surprised that they were sitting together, he didn't show any indication of it. Had he ever realized that Preston and I had been as serious as we were? I thought back to last Christmas and New Year's when Preston and I had started the beginnings of our short relationship. I didn't think we'd ever talk to our parents about our relationship status. But as I thought about it, Preston's dad probably knew all about it, unless Preston was holding all his hurt inside. Then I thought about Megan and Brinley. They must have said something to their parents. But then again, with their mom's cancer and recent attempted suicide, maybe Preston's breakup was the last thing on their minds. Brinley and Preston seemed to be taking it especially hard. I'd barely heard Brinley speak 2 words together lately. If it wasn't for whatever Megan and Michael had found, Megan would probably be in the same state of depression. My heart went out to them. How would our family handle it if our mom was dying and then tried to kill herself by overdosing on depression meds? I honestly had no answer. I hadn't experienced anything even close to it. I wished I could be there for Preston like he had been there for me when I'd discovered Isaac had been working with Will to try to kick the Mormons out of Bethel. I'd been in the worst pain of my life, and Preston had been right there by my side. Where was I when he was in pain? Off with Isaac. Gosh. I was officially a horrible person. A selfish person, disregarding a dear friend's pain because there was something shinier available. But what was I supposed to do about it now? I'd made my choice, kissed Isaac right in front of Preston, and now I had to live with the consequences of that choice. I had to see Preston in pain every day. I couldn't even go on a stinking ice skating trip without being reminded that I'd crushed my friend's heart. A nauseous feeling built in my belly as I thought about it. Brother Nelson pulled into the ice skating rink's parking lot behind a couple of other cars from our group. "Boy, you guys are a quiet group tonight," Brother Nelson said as he put the minivan into park. It wasn't like us. Usually, Brinley and Olivia were giggling over a million things, Megan and I were talking about boys or Primus, and Michael and Preston were talking about Preston's lawn mowing business, paintball, or the newest video game tactics they'd learned. We were a sad bunch, and I didn't know how to make it better. Well, except for Megan and Michael. They seemed plenty happy. Preston didn't seem super excited about it though. Michael had been way more supportive about Preston dating me. But then again, he was just happy for me to get away from Isaac. How could I help Preston feel any better when my mere presence seemed to cause him pain? The only thing I could do to help him at this point would be to break up with Isaac, and that was out of the question. How did everyone else deal with this? I was starting to understand why people were so hesitant to break out of the friend zone now. I wasn't even sure how it had happened with Preston and me. We'd just started kissing one snowy day, and bam. There was chemistry. It felt amazing and goodbye friend zone. Was I ever going to be willing to go back to that with Preston? Were Isaac and I going to stay together forever? What about next year? Was he going to stay with me? Would I still be at Bethel or would I be going to school with Preston? I had so many unanswered questions swirling through my head, and I didn't know what to do about any of them. "Can you go, Destiny?" Olivia asked from next to me. I'd been so lost in my thoughts that I hadn't realized the entire car had emptied except the 2 of us. "Oh, sorry." I climbed down from the van and looked up in surprise to see Preston standing next to the van like he'd been waiting for me. My heart did a little flip in my chest. Had he decided to forgive me? "Hey," he said. "Hey. Can you guys move?" I have no idea how I got stuck behind everyone else, but on the way back, I'm calling shotgun. "Sorry, Olivia," I said, stepping aside to let her pass. Preston and I fell into step behind her. Did he want me to talk to him? Was he okay with me? Did he hate me? "So," he said. "So?" "Yep." Okay, so he wanted to talk, but didn't know what to say? I scrambled for a safe topic. I was talking to my friends at school, and they want to start playing paintball again before the weather gets too warm. So I was thinking we ought to put a game together around the first week of March. I bit my lip, realizing that maybe paintball wasn't such a safe topic after all since the last time we'd played was when Isaac and I had gotten together. but Preston responded like it hadn't bothered him at all. For sure. I breathed a sigh of relief. This was going much better than I'd thought. What should I say now? Ever been skating before? Preston asked, rescuing me from my self-torture. Ice skating? No. I've been to the roller skating rink a few times. It's pretty fun. Have you been ice skating before? We used to go in Utah when I was a kid, and I've been back to visit family a few times for Christmas where we all went. At least you'll know what you're doing, I said. It's easier than you think. And I'm pretty sure they have this walker thing you can use, like the little kids who start out. Oh, gee thanks, I said. Anytime. He grinned and it felt like old times again. He opened the door, and we followed the crowd inside the building. Preston's dad paid for all of us and then pointed us in the direction of the skate rental counter. We grabbed our skates and headed over to a set of long benches. Preston sat next to me, and we bent over to lace up our skates. I'm a lot more nervous about this than I thought I would be, I admitted. Don't worry, the worst that could happen is that you'll break a bone or two, maybe get a concussion. The chance of death is actually pretty slim, so you're good. I rolled my eyes. Thanks. You're so comforting. Hey, that's what I'm here for, right? He caught the double meaning behind his words and looked away. I bit my lip again. I finished lacing up my skates and waited until Preston stood. Come on, he said. I just walk in these things on the ground, and I won't fall over? He laughed and took a stroll across the room. Oh, I said lamely. I got up and took a few shaky steps. It was strange that I was keeping my balance. I had fully expected to fall over. I'm not good at this. You gotta start somewhere, right? Just don't crack your head open. You might get blood on the ice. I'll be careful about that. Just for you. We stepped out onto the ice, and I grabbed for the railing, gripping it like it was my lifeline. You sure you don't want that walker thingy? He teased. I'm fine, I said through gritted teeth. Preston skated by me with his hands behind his back like it was no big deal. You gonna try to let go at some point? I made a face at him but took my grip off the railing and skated out into the rink. The blades rumbled over some ruts created in the ice by other skaters, and I threw my hands out to keep my balance. You're steadier than you realize. You need to relax. So says the guy who's been talking about my head bleeding on the ice. Hey, do you see any blood anywhere? Brinley skated up to us. Why are you guys talking about blood on the ice? Isn't that kind of morbid? He's the one who brought it up, I said, jerking my thumb toward Preston. Blame him. I'm just trying to get her to take a risk. By talking about her skull getting crushed on the ice? Brinley raised an eyebrow. He put his hands up defensively. Hey, no one said anything about skulls getting crushed. It felt good to joke with him like this. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed it. With his mom's illness, I hadn't really seen this side of Preston in a while. I couldn't help but wonder what had changed tonight to put him in a better mood. Over the next half hour, I circled the rink several times and built up the courage to gain speed. I whizzed by Michael and Megan, who were holding hands and laughing as they skated together like a couple on a Christmas card. Since they'd gone to the Valentine's banquet together, they'd been inseparable. It was weird and cute at the same time. Preston skated up to me. You got the hang of this pretty well now, huh? Seems that way. He followed my gaze to where Megan and Michael spun in a circle, holding on to each other and smiling. He had a pensive expression on his face. How do you feel about Megan and Michael? I asked. His jaw worked thoughtfully. It's weird to see my sister dating. I feel like I shouldn't mind it, but it leaves me unsettled. It's weird for me, too. I've never seen my brother date anyone before. It's not like it will be some uber-serious relationship or anything. I mean, he's putting in his mission papers soon. He'll probably be leaving this summer, Preston said. Yeah, who knows? She may go off to BYU and be married by the time he gets back. That's a stretch, he said. She'll only be barely graduated by then. Hey, you never know, I said, shrugging. It's happened before. Maybe if she had been dating some guy throughout high school. Yeah. Some guy like Michael, I said. Seriously? This is so weird for me. I'm not used to my sister dating someone. At least he's a good guy. Michael's one of the best. Any girl would be lucky to have him. It was true. Michael was an amazing brother. Yeah. I should probably cut him some slack. It's the least you could do. He certainly did it for you. I regretted the words the moment they fell from my mouth and stared down, hoping my hair would hide the blush I was sure was spreading across my cheeks. Preston skated ahead, and I worried that my words had bothered him. I blew out a breath and lagged, allowing him to gain some distance from me. I circled the rink a few more times on my own, lost in thought. Had I messed up something just now? I'd just gotten Preston's friendship back, and now I might have ruined it by bringing up our past relationship. My heart ached, and I realized how much I still cared about him. He was there for me during my darkest hours. Preston was the kind of guy my brother sent after me when I was sad and alone. If given the chance, my parents would probably handpick him as my future husband. But Isaac? Not so much. They barely tolerated having him around, even with him being completely interested in learning more about becoming a Mormon. Isaac showed up at my church on Sunday, he read the Book of Mormon, and he was meeting with the missionaries. He even got up early to go to seminary with me. I looked up and saw I was skating straight toward Preston and wouldn't have enough time to stop or swerve to keep from hitting him. The next few seconds seemed to slow, and then I slammed into his broad chest. Ow. The guy was like a wall, muscled from hours of working outside with a chainsaw all winter, helping customers with their trees. He reached out and steadied me, his hands warm around my waist. My breath caught, and time slowed as I looked up into his eyes. A current of electricity flowed between us, and his eyes reflected that he felt it, too. You okay? He asked, letting go of me and skating to the side. Yeah, I said breathlessly. I'm fine. Was I? Having Preston's hands on me like that had shaken me up more than the collision. Sorry about that. Which part was he apologizing for exactly? It's okay. It happens. A voice called over the loudspeaker, paging all the youth from our group to head off the rink. Preston and I skated toward the exit with the rest of our friends and waited as they funneled off the ice. I heard about the doctrinal statement. Megan told me when she got home from the banquet. I bit my lip. What else had Megan told him about the banquet? I was supposed to take him. I never got the chance to ask him, but I was sure Michael had told him I was planning to ask. Instead, he'd stayed home with his sick mom and watched Megan come into the house with her cheeks all aglow from her magical night with Michael. The same kind of night he was supposed to have had with me. How could he ever forgive me for what I'd done to him? We stepped off the ice and clomped to the nearest bench. He must have sensed my change in mood or lack of response to his comment because as he sat on the bench, he said, Destiny, I need to tell you something. I sat next to him, heart pounding. Yes? I accept your apology. My apology? When you came to me with the banana bread to apologize for what happened with Isaac. Oh. I couldn't think of anything else to say. I forgive you. I lifted my eyes to his, my lower lip trembling. He forgave me? For everything I'd done to him? You do? I do. How? I honestly don't understand how you've been so nice tonight after what I did to you. I don't deserve it. You made a mistake, Destiny. It hurt like heck, but I know you weren't trying to inflict pain on me. I'm so sorry I hurt you, I whispered. I know you are, Preston said. I needed to figure out what my heart needed. You deserved better than I could give you. I should have just told you that. I really messed everything up. I wouldn't have listened. I would have fought for you. I'm sorry it had to be like this, I said. And I'm sorry about your mom. I feel horrible about everything that happened and the timing. Gosh. It was so awful. It felt good to finally say these things to Preston, and I could feel a burden being taken from me as my heart began to heal. Thank you. That means a lot, he said. So, does this mean we're friends now? I asked. Of course, it does, he said. Good, I said, bending down to untie my laces. So about the doctrinal statement, he said. Yeah? What are you guys going to do? We're fighting against it. He blinked. You are? Why? Because Bethel is like home for us. But doesn't it bother you to go to a school where you aren't wanted? If it were me, I'd leave and never look back. I flinched at his words. I hadn't thought of it that way. But he was right. We weren't wanted at Bethel. All I'd been able to think about was how unfair it was, and how scared I was to leave the only school I'd ever known. How many people had actually shown me that they wanted me at that school? Until Hannah came, I wasn't included in many circles. Shanice was pretty much my only friend. I'd always thought it was because I wasn't involved in sports or any extracurriculars. That was part of why it was so important for me to join Primus. It made me feel wanted. I was part of something amazing. You look so conflicted. He laughed. Sorry. I know it's not funny. You just had a funny look on your face. I am conflicted, I admitted, slipping my feet out of the skates. Sorry to conflict you. No. You made a good point I hadn't thought about before. Which point was that? You said we weren't wanted at Bethel. Oh. Sorry? It's true though. I paused. Well, sort of. Elaborate. I can see how a year ago I wasn't wanted. But now I'm in Primus, and I have people who care about me at Bethel. People who will fight for me. Anyone at my lunch table would fight for me. Because what Dr. Robinson was trying to do was messed up. You have a lot more people than you realize who would fight for you, Michael said, coming up to us, holding his skates by the laces. Just on principle alone. You're probably right, I agreed. But most of those people know nothing about the doctrinal statement. For now, Michael said. Are you saying we should make a stand publicly? Why not? People should know. I doubt that will change the school board's mind, I said. If enough people take a stand with us, it will. They'll have to listen if people leave the school over it. Not to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but Bethel's student body isn't known for being progressive, I pointed out. Preston's right. They don't want us there. It was easy for Michael to be so upbeat about Bethel wanting us around. He was well loved by everyone. He was great at sports and one of the best singers in Primus. He didn't have a specific group of friends he hung out with. He was friends with the entire school and was welcomed at different lunch tables all the time. But I'd experienced my fair share of being bullied at Bethel. For the first time, part of me wondered what it would be like to start fresh at a new school where no one remembered when I was awkward and had no idea what to do with my frizzy hair.
Chapter 5, Preston. When we returned to the church, I sat in the back corner of the minivan and watched the Clarks climb out of the car. See ya, guys, I called out. Bye, Preston, Destiny said, pausing at the door to glance over her shoulder at me. My eyes trailed after her, and the feeling of having my hands on her hips flashed through my senses and I repressed a shudder. I wasn't sure if the moment would torture and haunt me or become a good memory. But I wanted to hope that it was the start of something rekindling between us. It felt good to talk to her again, to joke around. If Destiny could feel it, too, and I got the impression she did tonight, she might miss the good times we'd had together. She's warmed up to you, Megan murmured from the seat next to me. Only because I'm not giving her death glares anymore. You were giving her death glares? Not really. But I wanted to. I didn't really, but it felt better to think I did. Somehow it alleviated some of the pain to pretend that I hated her. It would be easier that way. But I could never hate Destiny. Well, I'm glad you don't want to give her death glares now. So what's the deal with you and Michael? I asked, eager for a subject change. Are you guys dating or something? We're figuring things out. Oh. That was as vague as possible. What do you want figured out? Her cheeks reddened. I like him, but I don't think he wants to get too serious before his mission. 2 years is a long time to be away from someone. He's probably afraid that you'll move on to someone else before he gets back. Like who? It's not like there are tons of choices around here. You never know who will step in and take your girl away from you, I said in a bitter tone. I guess Michael watching firsthand what happened to you would make him a little more cautious himself. What I went through with Destiny doesn't have to be a permanent thing, I said. So you're serious about fighting to get her back? Megan asked. I was wondering if that was what was going on tonight. I'm not sure it will work, I said. She's pretty blinded by him. It's easy when he's acting so interested in the church. Do you think he's just putting on an act? You mean how he's so interested in talking to the missionaries and showing up to church meetings? Yeah. Do you think he's just doing it to get her to stay with him? Possibly. I don't trust him, I said. I don't blame you, she said. Dad pulled into our garage, and we climbed out of the back seat. Preston, what happened with you and Destiny? Brinley asked, as if she'd been holding the question in for way too long and was about to explode with it. Nothing, I said, glancing toward Dad in a meaningful way. She clamped her lips shut until we were in the basement family room and Dad had disappeared up the stairs. Brinley pounced onto the couch next to me. Tell me what happened, she said, her eyes huge with anticipation. Nothing really, I said. Whatever. I saw you guys on the ice. You had your hands on her hips. I rolled my eyes. And that means that we're going to get back together now? I saw you too. You were definitely having a moment, Brinley insisted. Sometimes she was a lot more perceptive than I gave her credit for. She knocked into me. I was helping her keep her balance. It's nothing more than anyone else would do. But you're not just anyone else, she said, stabbing a finger at me. It was all over her face. Admit it, Preston. She still wants you and you saw that just as clearly as I did tonight. What does it matter? She's with him. The words came out with more force than I meant. Brinley sat back, her eyes wide. You said yourself that you don't know if she'll be with him forever, Megan said. She's right, Brinley jumped in. He could smash her heart again, and you need to be ready for when that happens. Plus, this is high school. Everyone jumps in and out of relationships like they're trying on shoes at the mall, Megan added. Well, I'm not the kind of guy to try on lots of shoes. I see the ones I like on the shelf, and I don't bother trying them on until I'm sure they look like something I'd want to buy. I can respect that, Megan commented. It's too bad Destiny doesn't, Brinley said. Destiny's trying to figure things out, I said. And that's okay. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself, Brinley said. Maybe I am. Brinley squealed and clapped her hands. What? Megan asked. I just had the best idea. Preston needs a makeover. Yes. Megan agreed. We can take him to the mall and fix him up. Why do I have a bad feeling about this? No. Listen to me, Brinley insisted. If you want to get Destiny to pick you over Isaac, you need to step up your game. Destiny's always talking about how she loves the way Isaac dresses and wears nice cologne. Megan tugged on my t-shirt. This has to go. What? I scoffed. This is my favorite shirt. Your shirt is swallowing you up, and it has 3 stains and 2 holes in it. And your jeans are covered in grass stains and have holes in the knees. And not in a stylish way. Girls don't like that. This should be what you wear to mow lawns and only then. I rubbed my jaw thoughtfully. She had a point. I had done little to make sure I dressed well, and I never wore cologne. And you need to buy her something special. Brinley's eyes lit up. Megan, remember that pretty snowflake necklace I almost bought at the mall last week? Yes. That would be perfect. Their first kiss was in the snow. I looked back and forth between my scheming sisters. When do we do this?
Chapter 6, Destiny. I turned off the alarm on my phone and groaned. 5:30 came way too early. I should be used to it after a year and a half of seminary. But it was still hard every morning. I rolled out of bed and tiptoed across the room, careful not to wake Olivia. She still had until next fall to worry about getting up for seminary. I locked myself in my bathroom with the school uniform I'd chosen to wear for the day and turned on the shower, nice and hot. Most people outside the Mormon culture relied on coffee to wake them up in the morning. I relied on my shower. I always stepped out refreshed and ready to conquer the day, even when it was before 6 a.m. All morning, the image of Preston putting his hands on my waist kept popping into my head. And then it led to daydreaming about our past kisses, his soft lips against mine, how he smelled when I nuzzled my head into his shoulder. How patient he'd been when I was crying and in so much pain. His strong arms around me, comforting me. He always made me feel safe, loved, protected. Had I made a mistake by deciding to date Isaac instead of waiting for Preston to cool off and come to me once he'd forgiven me? I felt guilty for even thinking this, but lately Isaac had been so busy. I was starting to wonder if I mattered as much to him as he said I did. I tucked my shirt into my uniform pants and returned to the bathroom where I worked leave-in conditioner into my damp strands so they would dry naturally into shiny waves full of volume. I swept golden eyeshadow over my lids and finished the look with mascara and eyeliner. I didn't bother with anything more than lip gloss. Isaac usually kissed it off too quickly, and that could get awkward. Thinking about kissing Isaac made my mind reel after reliving all the memories of being with Preston. It was like my brain was lining them both up in front of me, and I had no idea what the correct choice was. Up until last night, there wasn't really any choice at all. Because Preston wouldn't have me. But I'd jumped right into Isaac's outstretched arms. He was the easy choice. He was carefree and happy. I didn't have to comfort him because he had a dying mom. I didn't have to worry about him judging me. Being with Isaac meant I could push my guilt away and bury it instead of facing what I'd done. Sure, I'd tried to make it up to Preston with the banana bread and my apology, but did I actually mean it when Isaac's kiss was still lingering on my lips from the night before? Michael stepped into his bathroom across the hall. His damp hair was combed to the side, and he wore his school uniform. He grabbed a bottle of cologne from the bathroom counter and spritzed it onto himself. I grinned to myself. That was new. Since when did Michael wear cologne? He had it bad for Megan. I was itching to find out what was going on with them, and I wasn't sure which of them would be more willing to tell me. I went to my room to put on my Bethel hoodie and my backpack. I dropped my cell, a pathetic flip phone, into my purse and headed down the hall. Ready to go? Michael asked when I stepped into the kitchen. I still haven't eaten. He tossed me a chocolate peanut butter energy bar. Breakfast is served. Thanks, I said, ripping open the package and taking a bite. I filled my water bottle at the fridge and twisted on the cap. I followed Michael down to his green Honda Civic and tossed my bag into the back seat. I got in the front seat and shut the door. The entire car smelled like his cologne. I refrained from rolling my eyes. At least he had good taste. After taking a few bites from my energy bar, I folded the loose end of the wrapper shut and tucked it into the big pocket on the front of my hoodie. So what's the deal with you and Megan? I took a swig from my water bottle. He shrugged. I'm not sure. We haven't defined it as anything. I tapped my foot in irritation. He wasn't very forthcoming. Have you guys kissed? We have. I pursed my lips. The way he worded that made it sound like the kiss I saw wasn't an isolated incident. Just that one time? I leaned forward eagerly. Nope. Ooh. There was more going on between them than I realized. So you're kissing her, but you don't know where it's going? I asked. He cringed. Sorry. Did that sound judgmental? Because I didn't mean it that way. I'm the last person who should judge. I bit my tongue. What was I saying? My mouth was running wild, and it seemed I had very little control over it. He cringed again, more noticeably this time. Sorry. TMI? A little, he admitted. It looks like you and Preston made up. As friends. I had to make that abundantly clear. You sure about that? Do you think I'd cheat on Isaac? I don't want to make that mistake again. But the problem was, I wasn't sure about anything. I felt something strong with Preston at the skating rink. It felt like it did when we were dating. And thinking about it made my head spin. Preston was easy to spend time with. Conversation flowed naturally. And he needed me more than ever right now. I was glad I could be friends with him. I just hoped Isaac was okay with it. But why should Isaac trust me? He knew I was capable of cheating on my last boyfriend. What was going to prevent me from cheating on him? And after Aspen cheated on him, I wasn't so sure he would be able to handle it happening again. Why did everything have to be so hard? Why couldn't I just make them both feel happy and safe? I pressed my forehead against the window and closed my eyes, letting the cool glass soothe my aching head. You okay? Michael asked. I didn't answer. I kept my head against the door, listening to the hum of the car as it traveled toward the church where seminary was hosted. Hey. Sorry if I upset you, he said. I know you've been through a lot. I haven't been through a lot, I said. I'm the one causing pain for everyone. Not everything is your fault. I don't know how to make it better. Who said it was your job to make it better? He asked. I huffed, my breath creating a cloud of fog on the window. We pulled into the church parking lot, and I spotted Isaac's black truck a few spots away from us. I climbed out of the car and shoved a lock of wavy hair behind my ear, still a little damp from my shower. Isaac isn't giving up on looking into the church, is he? Michael asked, nodding toward the black truck. Are you waiting for him to stop? I realized as I said it that I had a little too much bite in my voice, and I wished I could take it back. I don't know what he's planning to do, that's all. I pulled my energy bar out of my hoodie pocket and finished it as we walked into the building. I tossed the wrapper in a trash can just inside the doors. We walked into the seminary room, where Isaac was already sitting and talking with Megan. Preston was at the open closet, pulling out his scriptures. I took a seat next to Isaac. Good morning. Good morning yourself, he said. You smell like peanut butter, he murmured, his face close to mine. Sorry. I just finished an energy bar. I unzipped my purse and pulled out a pack of wintergreen gum. Want a piece? I offered. Sure, he said, slipping a stick of gum from the package. We unwrapped our gum, and I folded my stick into my mouth. I set the wrapper on the table and creased the foil into a tiny, bulky square. Preston took a seat on the other side of me with his scriptures. Hey, Destiny. Hey. My voice sounded strange and high-pitched. I blushed hotly and looked around, grasping for the right words to clear the awkward air around me, and that's when I spotted the space in front of me. Oh, shoot. I forgot to get my scriptures. As I got up, I looked over my shoulder and glimpsed Preston and Isaac looking away from each other with my empty chair between them. I grabbed my scriptures from the cabinet, biting the inside of my cheek. How many more stupid things would I say or do today? I was a distracted mess, and since Preston's acceptance of my apology, my head had been a swirl of emotions. When I got back to my seat, the two guys still weren't talking to each other. Preston was staring at his scriptures, and Isaac was scrolling through his phone. At least they weren't throwing punches. If Isaac had seen how Preston had put his hands on me last night, would he be throwing punches? I remembered how Preston had been the one to attack Isaac and shook my head internally. No. Isaac had just stood there and taken it from Preston. But maybe that was because he didn't feel as threatened or cornered by Preston. It was like Isaac knew I would come back to him, that it was only a matter of time. He was calm and collected and confident. Preston knew all along that I wasn't over Isaac. So it made sense that he felt threatened. Maybe he knew deep down himself that it was only a matter of time before I went back to Isaac. But would I stay with Isaac? Was that really what was best for me? Even if Isaac converted, it would always be hard to be around his family. They would probably never really accept me. I would always be the Mormon girl to them. The girl who wanted to drag their son down to hell. Was that something I would be okay with? Mom and Dad always told me that I marry who I date. It was why they were so against me dating Isaac for so long. He wouldn't be able to take me to the temple to be married unless he decided to get baptized and fully commit to my faith. I pushed the unwelcome thoughts out of my head. I'd made my choice. I had to fully explore a real relationship with Isaac before I could consider anything with Preston. It was the only choice that made sense. Because it didn't matter what my parents said or what I felt with Preston on the skating rink, Isaac was wrapped tightly around my heart, and that wasn't changing anytime soon. I was in love with him. I looked over and took in his beautiful dark eyes. He caught my gaze, and his mouth curled into a satisfied smile. Preston nudged my elbow as I sat back down. "Hey," he said. "Do you know what chapter we're on?" "Oh, no." Isaac leaned past me. "Chapter 32. "Thanks," Preston said. "No worries." My brow raised. They were being nice to each other? Throughout the rest of the class, Preston kept leaning over to whisper things to me, bringing the side of his head close enough I could smell him. And he smelled amazing, like the forest after a thunderstorm. Had he and Michael gone cologne shopping together? What was wrong with me? I refrained from banging my fists against my forehead. I was just thinking about how I was in love with Isaac, and 15 minutes later I'm swooning over how good Preston smells. That was it. I was officially a giant, confused mess. How could anyone stand me? I could hardly stand myself. This time I got a nudge from the other side. "Destiny?" Isaac said. "Brother Bernard is asking you a question." "Sorry. Can you repeat the question?" I asked, my face red. When class was over, Preston stayed glued to my side with his quirky jokes. I couldn't help laughing at him. But it was bugging Isaac. He didn't show it overtly, but it was subtle, like a slight frown or him looking away. But I could tell he didn't appreciate all the attention Preston was showering on me. "Hey," Isaac said, right in front of Preston. "You want to ride to school together and get some hot chocolate?" "That sounds great. I just need to grab my backpack from Michael's car." We found my brother in the hall, grinning at Megan. "Hey guys, can we take this party to the car so I can get my backpack out?" Isaac's driving me to school again. Michael and Megan barely acknowledged me but migrated to the parking lot. They were deep in conversation about this show I hadn't seen called Devastation. They were geeking out over the season finale and what they thought would happen next. Had he been going over to the Nelsons to watch it with her? The way they were talking, it almost sounded like they'd watched it side by side. How had all of this been happening without me noticing? Was I that wrapped up in my life? That was when I noticed Preston had disappeared. My stomach twisted. Was he sitting in his truck, depressed, waiting for Megan to come out? We walked past the bathroom doors, and he popped out from the men's room. "Fancy meeting you here," he said to us. I almost jumped out of my hoodie. I slammed my fist into his bicep. "Ow," he protested, rubbing his arm where I'd punched him. "Why the beat down? You deserve it for scaring me." And there it was again. That slight frown on Isaac's face. We needed to get out of here. I looked over at Michael, but he was leaning against the glass doors, still talking to Megan about his theories on the next season of their show. Michael eventually meandered over to his car and unlocked it. Preston came with us, cracking jokes along the way. Isaac followed with a deepening frown. I grabbed my backpack out, vowing to bring it inside with me from that moment on, and turned to Isaac. "Ready to go?" "Sure," he said, his voice strained, like he was trying to cover his growing irritation. "See you later, guys," I said with a wave. Michael waved back. "Bye, Destiny," Preston hollered, cupping his hands around his mouth. Isaac opened my side of the truck for me, and I caught Preston's eyes on us from across the parking lot. His grin was gone, but I didn't think he'd meant for me to notice. I climbed inside, and Isaac shut the door behind me. Isaac rounded the truck to his side and got in, snapping on his seatbelt. "Sorry that took so long," I said with a lame attempt at starting a conversation after that awkward exchange. "Don't worry about it." He said it, keeping his voice light. But as he backed out of his parking spot, his lips were pressed together, and his movements were stiff. What was going on with these guys? First nice to each other and now bugging each other?
Chapter 7, Isaac. I sat with my legs stretched out on my bed, and my computer open in my lap. My back ached from researching and typing for the last hour for the research paper due for my English class. I wished Destiny could come over for a study date. Aspen and I used to study at my place with our laptops all the time. We'd sit on the couch in the family room and work on papers or study for tests for hours. She always showed up with the best food, too. I sat up straighter and stretched my arms and aching spine. I checked my phone and saw a couple of texts from Destiny. She was being sweet, telling me that she missed me. "I miss you too. I was just thinking about how I wished you could come over and study with me." She texted back, "I wish I could," sad face. I hadn't said anything to Destiny about it, but I was worried that Preston was beginning to catch her eye. But she needed the freedom to choose who she wanted to be with. I didn't want her to feel pressured to choose me. I was the harder choice for her. By being with me, she was sacrificing a lot. She faced a lot of extra bullying at school that she otherwise wouldn't have faced because she chose to date me. She deserved to have the freedom to choose Preston, if that was what she wanted. I could handle the pain. It was worth it to see her happy. But I wasn't going to just stand aside and let him take her right out from under me either. I planned to do everything I could to make Destiny happy. I cared more about her happiness than my own. But if there was a way that we could work it out, I would do everything in my power to make sure she was the happiest girl on the planet. Dad's voice rumbled downstairs, and then came the familiar pounding of his feet up the steps. When I turned back to my paper, I heard Dad's voice coming from his bedroom saying something about the school board. "Oh, was the meeting tonight?" I heard Mom say. I gingerly moved my computer off my lap and onto the bed and tiptoed to my cracked open door. We were making the final adjustments to the doctrinal statement and hammering out the stipulations we planned to set. "And what about the Clarks? Are Earl and Mary still making a fuss?" Dad let out a heavy sigh. "They want to come to our next meeting." "Is that allowed?" "Apparently, it is. They still feel like Bethel is the best option for their grandkids. You can't really blame them. The Clarks have had 8 years to come back to us. If they were going to, they would have by now. Is that really fair?" "You don't actually know that," Mom said. "Is it fair that my son is dating a Mormon girl and has no intention of bringing her back to the faith? If anything, it seems like he's moving toward her side. Isaac is about to graduate. Maybe you should just let it go." "Let it go? What happens when she gets her claws into the next unsuspecting guy?" I frowned at that image. Did he think I was really going to move on from Destiny after I graduated? I'd only applied to schools nearby. The furthest one was only an hour away, and it wasn't even my top pick. "I think you're blowing it out of proportion. What about the younger kids? Think about the impact we could have on their lives. This is their salvation we're talking about here. It's our mission as a school to help others find Jesus. It makes more sense to reach out to those who are ready and willing to listen. The Clarks aren't part of that group. They've proven time and again that they are too entrenched in their own beliefs to listen to what we have to say. Maybe the older ones have, but they'll be graduating soon. You don't know what the younger kids are going to be like. I needed to go to that next meeting. I needed to stand up for Destiny and speak for her. The school needed to know how valuable she still was. She was kind and didn't cause trouble, unless you counted dating me, which I didn't. I cracked open my door and looked out into the hall. Light spilled from their open doorway into the dark hallway. I stepped across the shadows to their bedroom and knocked on the open door. "Isaac? You're still up?" Mom asked. She was sitting up in bed in her pajamas with the covers draped over her lap. Dad was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in his red polo shirt with the Bethel Bears mascot embroidered over the left breast. "Yeah. Research paper. Is everything okay?" she asked. "I just overheard y'all talking. And I have a request to make." "What is it, son?" Dad asked. "I'd like to come to the next school board meeting." A frown creased Dad's face. "I have something of my own I'd like to say to them. I don't like it, but I can't prevent you from going. I don't understand why you're pushing so hard for this doctrinal statement. Why does it matter so much to you? It's my responsibility to protect the students. You used to be on board with this, Isaac. That was before I knew better. The Clarks are good people. They don't deserve to be kicked out of our school. They're good students and stay out of trouble. The Clarks have caused more trouble than you know." "How?" "By believing differently than you." "Is that so bad?" "By standing up for what they believe even when it's not popular. I respect that about them. I didn't see it before, but I do now." Dad stared back at me, his jaw clenched in disapproval. "They've already sucked you into their web of lies. I've come to accept that now. I'm not going to fight you on it anymore. I failed to protect you, but I can prevent it from happening to anyone else at my school. Why can't you just see beyond your own opinions once in a while? You've always taught me to study the Bible out in my own mind to find the truth. This is what I'm doing. But I'm looking beyond, searching to see if maybe there really are other ways of doing things that are good. You ought to try it out sometime." "I don't like your tone," Dad said with a warning in his voice. "I will have respect in my home. You don't have to agree with everything I say, but you do have to respect me. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," I said through clenched teeth. "Good night, son," he said, dismissing me. "Good night." I turned from his room, seething. I snapped my computer shut and tucked it under my bed so I wouldn't step on it in the morning. I pulled off my shirt and balled it up and threw it into the wicker basket in the corner of my room. It landed squarely inside. Usually, it made me happy when I scored into my laundry basket, but I was too mad to care tonight. I dropped to the floor and launched into a series of push-ups. I kept going until my muscles burned and screamed at me to stop. I collapsed, my cheek pressing into the carpet as my breath came out in heavy pants. I rolled onto my back and stared up at the ceiling fan whirring above me. I sat up, grabbing a towel draped over the side of my laundry basket and wiped the sweat from my face. Chapter 8, Isaac. I sat outside the conference room where the school board was meeting. Dad had reassured me before going into the meeting that we would be called into the room to speak when they were ready for us. Destiny's grandparents showed up 5 minutes after me. "Isaac. It's good to see you." Mr. Clark took the chair next to me. His thick wavy hair was the color of steel. His wife sat next to him. She leaned forward to smile at me, her expression full of kindness. Her dark hair curled around her ears, and as I looked into her bright blue eyes, I realized where Destiny had gotten hers from. She reached across her husband's lap and took my hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for our granddaughter." I stared back at her, taken aback. "You're welcome," I choked out past the lump forming in my throat. It was the first time someone had truly recognized and appreciated how hard I'd fought for her. "We were worried that this school had given up on our grandchildren," Mr. Clark said. "It's good to know that not everyone has. You have my word that I will do everything I can to fight for them." That's what Destiny explained to us tonight when we stopped by the house on our way here. I wiped a stray tear away and fought the rest that threatened to escape. "It's not right." She told me how hard it was on the younger kids. Mrs. Clark nodded, tears forming in her eyes as well. "That's why we're here. When my grandbabies are suffering, I'm not going to just stand by and do nothing." "It's not just the younger kids who are suffering," Mr. Clark added with a pointed look at me. "I know. Destiny is hurting a lot." The door opened, and Dr. Green beckoned for us to join them in the room. I stepped inside. I'd only seen this room from the hall when the door happened to be open. I'd never been inside before. A long table stood in the center of the room surrounded by the 9 members of the school board seated in tall-backed padded chairs. Dr. Green took his seat at the head of the table next to Dad, who pushed his chair out and stood. "I'm sure all of you know my son Isaac and Earl and Mary Clark. They've come to speak with us today." I spoke first. "Thank you for allowing us to come take a portion of your time night. I know you all have busy lives. I recently heard of the doctrinal statement that has been formed by the board, and I am here appeal to the board to rescind that statement. I feel that it will create an atmosphere at Bethel that will inhibit our ability to reach out to those who need to hear God's word the most. What we have here at Bethel is valuable. Why should we be keeping it to ourselves? Haven't we all been commanded by God to spread His word?" The members of the school board stared back at me with unreadable expressions. I swallowed thickly and continued on. "I am sure that many of you know the Clark family. All 5 of their children attend the academy. It's the only school they have ever known. They are good students who, according to their parents, do their homework, avoid detention, and make A's and B's. But they believe differently than we do. They go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is a decision they made 8 years ago when they decided to leave Bethel for their new church. They were good members of Bethel. Mr. Clark was a deacon. They went to every meeting. Their faith in God was strong, and after speaking with them on many occasions, I can assure you that their faith in God is just as strong today as it was 8 years ago. They have told me that when they left Bethel, they didn't feel like they were giving up any of their old beliefs, they'd found new knowledge and were adding to it." I clasped my hands and paced across the room. "Many of you have known me since I was born. You've heard me speak many times, and you know that I rely heavily on my personal relationship with God to help me get through life. I've done my homework. I've checked out the Mormon Church. I have read parts of the Book of Mormon. It is not evil. I have searched to find the evil in this church that I've heard spoken of many times by members of Bethel and various teachers that I've had. I can't find anything evil. I have been in the Clark's home and eaten at their table. They are a good family. They believe in honesty and hard work. These are the kind of people we need at our school. Because they make it a better place. Thank you. That's all I have." I backed up and took a seat in one of the chairs that lined the wall. Dad stood again. "Earl. Mary. If either of you would like a moment to speak, you are free to do so now." Mr. Clark rose from his seat 2 chairs down from me. "I would also like to thank all of you for allowing my wife and me to speak tonight. It is an honor to be in the presence of so many familiar faces who have worshipped by our side for many long years. I know your hearts, and I know you have the best intentions in mind for this school. Your years of service and dedication to making Bethel a safe environment for the students has helped bless countless lives, including the lives of my 5 grandchildren. They have grown into marvelous individuals. Their knowledge of the Bible never ceases to impress me. They have a thorough understanding of everything you've included in your doctrinal statement. But they choose to worship in their own way. He paused for a minute and adjusted his glasses. I'll admit I wasn't happy when they decided to leave Bethel. I tried to talk them out of it myself. But I knew that the best way to help them is to keep them at Bethel. And for 8 years they have chosen to stay at this school. They have studied alongside their fellow students and have worked hard to do their very best and to show glory to God. All 5 of those children consider themselves saved. They have dedicated their lives to God. All 5 have chosen to be baptized in the Mormon Church, but like Isaac so kindly stated before, their faith in God is strong. They are honest and hardworking. They are an asset to this school and have been for many years. He turned and looked at his wife. Mary, do you have anything you want to add? She stood, and he returned to his chair. I would like to second everything that Isaac and my husband have just said. I'm sure that many of you know my oldest grandson, Michael. How many of you have heard of the reputation that he has at Bethel? I wouldn't know anything about it except that a steady stream of young people approach me in church asking me if I'm his grandmother. And without fail, the next thing that usually comes out of their mouths is some story of how he had reached out in kindness to them when they felt alone or sad or rejected. Those kids don't view Michael Clark as an outsider who believes in a strange religion or someone who is going to hell. If you asked any of those kids if they thought Michael was going to hell, they would tell you that he was the kindest person to them at the school. It's not for me to judge where people go after they die, but if you ask me, God doesn't send people who try that hard to follow him to hell. Her voice caught, thick with emotion. She shook her head, her dark, short curls swaying with the motion. It just feels wrong to think that way. These are innocent children. Don't punish them by taking this opportunity for a better education away from them just because they believe differently from you. I wish each of you could have been there when we told our sweet grandbabies that they would have to sign a piece of paper that says they believe in things that goes against what they learn at church every Sunday. They are all scared. Little Brianna is only 8. She is worried about how she's going to make friends at a new school. She's not going through this because her dad got a job in a new city or because there's no money left for them to keep attending Bethel. It's because a group of men she's probably never met made a decision to force her to sign a paper denying her faith. Those kids don't know how rough public school can be. They aren't used to the profanity or filthy talk that goes on in the halls of a public school. I don't want my sweet grandchildren exposed to any of that for as long as I can help it. So I am begging all of you to please find mercy in your hearts for a grandmother worried about her grandchildren. She took a step back and sank into her chair, pulling a tissue from her purse and dabbing her eyes. Dad stood, his face unmoved. Thank you for your input. Is there anything else you would like to add? No, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, I said. Mr. Clark leaned over to his wife before speaking. We also thank you for the chance to speak, but we have nothing to add. You are free to leave then. Thank you for sharing your input. We greatly value your thoughts and opinions. We will continue our discussion, and hopefully we will come to a final decision tonight. We filed from the room, and when the door was shut, Mrs. Clark dabbed her eyes with the tissue again. Thank you for all your kind words about our family. Destiny is lucky to have you. I really can't thank you enough for standing up for our family like that. You are welcome in our home anytime, Mr. Clark said. We'd love to have you and Destiny come have dinner with us sometime. Thank you, sir. It would be an honor. As they walked away, down the hall, I heard Mrs. Clark say to her husband, "Such a nice boy." I turned back to the door that was now closed tightly and stared at it with a sinking feeling in my belly. Somehow, even after our heroic speeches, I didn't get the impression that it would make a bit of difference. These were the people who created the doctrinal statement. I knew them all well. They were good people, but some of the most stubborn people I'd ever met. Why would they change now?
Chapter 9, Destiny. I shifted on the soft leather of the passenger seat of Isaac's truck and took a sip of my hot chocolate as Isaac told me about his visit to the school board last night. I sat in awe as he described how hard he fought for our family, tears welling in my eyes. I couldn't believe he was willing to stand as the student body president against the school board and speak so strongly for my family. Especially since he was directly speaking out against his father in front of all his closest and most respected peers. I don't know how to begin to thank you, I said. If my family understood what you've sacrificed for them. It was the right thing to do, he said with determination in his voice. Why are you so amazing? I asked, running my fingers through the hair at the nape of his neck. I'm just a regular guy, he answered. PSH, I scoffed. You're Isaac Robinson. You are way beyond regular. Ask any girl at this school. Or any girl from this town for that matter. He grinned at me. You're adorable. You know that, right? It still amazed me that he wanted me. Isaac pulled into the school and parked in the spot labeled, reserved for student body president. It was still hard to get used to the fact that I'd stepped out of this truck every morning this week. Every time I did, I felt multiple pairs of eyes on me. You'd think they'd be used to me getting out of Isaac's truck by now, but they didn't seem to be. Do you think they're going to get rid of the doctrinal statement? I asked. Based on your experience last night. Did they seem receptive to what you had to say? Honestly? Isaac blanched. I don't know. But they said they were reaching a decision tonight? That's what they said. We'll see. We walked into the school, past the front office. Destiny? Mrs. Lewis, the office lady, called from her window. I walked to her. Yes? She passed an envelope through the window to me. Can you make sure this letter gets to your parents? I froze, staring at the return address printed on the envelope. It began with Office of the Headmaster. I took the envelope with a shaky hand. I'll make sure it gets to them. Clutching it with a sweaty hand, I turned to Isaac. That's it, isn't it? I don't see any other reason for your dad to send them an official letter. We walked toward our lockers. Are you going to open it? It's for my parents. So? You're just going to wait until after school to give it to them? I can't just open it without their permission. Open what? Hannah asked, catching up to us in the hall. Destiny just got a mysterious letter from the front office, addressed to her parents. Ooh. Are you going to open it? You're just as bad as he is, I said, jutting a thumb at Isaac. Why don't you just call your mom really quick and ask her if you can open it? Hannah suggested. That's not a bad idea. I took my phone to the bathroom to make the call since Bethel was so strict about cell phones being out in the halls. Mom was quick to give her approval, but made me promise that I'd call her back and let her know what the letter said. Isaac was waiting for me outside the bathroom. Well, he asked. She said yes. But I have to let her know what it says. You'd better hurry, Hannah said. The bell rings in 2 minutes. I ripped open the letter, and Isaac and Hannah read over my shoulder as I scanned the contents. That's lame, Hannah said. It's not as bad as it could be, Isaac said. So you get to choose whether you can stay at Bethel, but they're keeping the doctrinal statement for everyone else. Well, they'll only make students sign it when they're moving from elementary school to middle school or from middle school to high school. But they've chosen to let my family be exempt from the new policy since we've been around so long. Well, I can't get any more tardies or I'm toast, so we'd better head to homeroom, Hannah said. Isaac took hold of my hand and looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. Are you going to be okay? He asked. I shook my head. I don't know. Everything's kind of fuzzy right now. I'm so sorry. Do you want to just get out of here? No. I'm going to head to class. I need the distraction. Okay. I'm just worried. Thank you. For everything. The bell rang. I'll see you at lunch, Isaac said. I dashed down the hall to my homeroom and slid into the desk next to Hannah. "Better late than never," she said. "You're one to talk," Shanice said from the desk behind me. "Miss always late." "Hey," Hannah said, jabbing a finger at her, "I was on time today, thank you very much." "Not to pry, actually I'm totally prying, but what's that letter about?" Hudson asked from the desk on the other side of me. "It's about the doctrinal statement," I said. I explained the basic gist of the letter to him. "You guys must have really twisted some arms to get them to grandfather you in like that," Hudson said. "It was Isaac and my grandparents. They'd been members of Bethel Baptist Church for over 30 years or something. They went in front of the school board last night and fought for us. And someone actually listened," Hannah said. "Imagine that. I didn't know they had it in them." I wish I could see the look on Will Green's face when he realizes that Isaac was the one to help you stay after all the crap he tried to pull. Do you know how happy it makes me that he sent Isaac to dig up dirt on the Mormons only to end up falling for one of them? If you'd told me at the retreat that I'd end up dating Isaac, and that he was going to fight for me and defend me as a Mormon to the school board, I would have laughed in your face, I said. "Well, at least you know he's not still trying to dig up dirt on the Mormons," Hudson said. "Yeah, he's pretty well proven himself after this," I agreed. "Isaac's changed a lot," Hannah said. "He's a much nicer person since he fell for you." "He just needed to get rid of Miss Prissy Pants and His Holiness," Shanice said. I laughed. "They're out of his life and, poof. He's a nicer person," Shanice said. Between classes I slipped into the bathroom and called Mom. I read her the letter. After I finished, I was met with silence. "Mom? Are you still there?" "Yeah, honey, I'm here." "What are you thinking?" "I'm going to have to speak with your father about what he wants to do." "How are you feeling about the whole thing?" she asked. "Do you want to stay?" "I don't know. I know the younger kids do." "What's your hang-up with staying?" she asked. "It's just something Preston said." "What's that?" "He said that if it were up to him, he wouldn't want to go to a school where he wasn't wanted. He said he'd leave and wouldn't look back." "Well, they've made an exception for you, so maybe you aren't as unwanted as Preston may think." "I know, it's just that I've faced a lot of bullying here. I like the idea of getting a fresh start at a school where people don't remember me when I was going through my awkward phase." "I can see that," Mom said. "Well, like I said, I need to talk with your dad about this, and then we can have a family meeting about it and discuss it together. Sound good?" "Yeah. I guess so." "Good, now you'd better get off the phone and get to class," Mom said right as the bell rang. "Was that the bell?" "Yeah. You'd better go." I snapped my phone shut and headed to second period. When I got to my locker before lunch, Isaac was leaning against it, staring at me like I was the hottest girl he'd ever seen. "Hey you," I said. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Can't help but stare sometimes." I blushed. "You do realize that there are tons of other girls here way prettier than me, right?" He looked around. "Nope. I guess I don't realize that. Because I don't see anyone who fits your description." I stepped closer to him. "I missed you while I was in class." His lips curled, looking totally kissable. "I missed you, too." "Get a room, you too," Hannah said. "But that would be against school rules," Isaac said with mock innocent eyes. "It's a figure of speech, you dork." Hannah swung her locker open and shoved her books inside, swapping it for her purse. Evan appeared from the crowd, and Hannah's face lit up when she saw him. She slammed her locker shut and gushed, "Hey. Ready for lunch?" Isaac scowled. I shut my locker and linked my arm around Isaac's to lead him away from the sight of Hannah and Evan together. When we got to the lunchroom, the smell of garlic and cheese hit my senses. "Holy cow, that smells good," I said. "Skip the brown bag lunch and eat baked spaghetti with me," Isaac said. I glanced down at my lunch. "Are you sure?" "Of course, I've got it." Don't worry about it. That's really nice of you, I said. If I'd realized you'd liked school lunch, I would have offered to buy for you a long time ago. My parents can't afford school lunches for all their kids. I'm so sick of brown bagging it, I admitted. I'm sorry. I didn't realize things were so tight for you guys, he said. The only reason we're able to go to Bethel is because my grandparents are paying for it. Really? He asked. Your grandparents are really nice people. They invited us to come eat dinner at their house sometime. They did? Yep. It made sense that they would like Isaac so much. They probably thought he was trying to convince me to turn into a Baptist again. Would they like him so much if they knew he was seriously looking into the Mormon church? When we got to our table with our trays, I took a bite of my baked spaghetti and closed my eyes and let out a little moan of pleasure. Should I give you and your spaghetti a moment of privacy? Isaac asked. You might need to. This stuff is amazing, I said. You know what we should do sometime? What? I asked, wiping a bit of stray sauce from my chin. I should take you to Smoky Bones for lunch. You mean go off campus? I'd never even considered the idea. I didn't have a car, and I certainly didn't have money for stuff like going out to lunch on a whim. It will give us more time alone, and it's another excuse to get you to ditch the brown bag. I gazed up into his beautiful dark eyes. I love that idea. Destiny, Hudson said. Have you decided what you're going to do about the letter? No, I said. You should go to Acorn Creek High, Hannah said. I stared at her, realization dawning at why she'd suggest something like that. Hannah wanted me to go to school with her next year. Hannah wasn't expecting to come back to Bethel. Eventually, people were going to find out about her pregnancy, and there was no way they'd let her come back to Bethel next year after that. Being the headmaster's niece wasn't going to get her out of this one. She'd probably given it a lot of thought. I felt bad that I hadn't been there more for her to talk about what she was going through. Her baby was due in August. She could have the baby, give it up for adoption, and then go back to school within a couple of weeks. What? Shanice squeaked, looking at Hannah like she'd just stepped out of an alternate universe. Why would you possibly want her to leave? Hannah shrugged, playing it off like she'd just randomly blurted something without giving it any thought. If someone gave me the opportunity to leave Bethel, I'd take it in a heartbeat, Hudson said. But this is different. You can't leave. Why not? I turned to him with interest. Because that would be letting them win, he said, stabbing a chunk of ground beef and shoving it into his mouth. I agree, Isaac said. We fought hard to convince the school board to let you stay. I think you should do it. But ultimately, you need to do what feels right for you. That was the problem. I had no idea what felt right.
Chapter 10, Isaac. I pulled my truck into the parking lot of Destiny's church. Dad had begun to figure out that I wasn't going to church at Aspen's grandfather's church anymore. He knew I was going to church with Destiny. It was like he'd given up on fighting me on it, which left me a little suspicious. It was like he had something else up his sleeve or something. I stepped out of my truck. It was still a bit nerve-wracking to show up at church with Destiny, but the missionaries were always so happy to see me. But I still felt like a lot of the members were giving me dirty looks when they thought I wasn't looking. Mostly it was old ladies or women with teenage kids who probably didn't want their kids getting any big ideas about bringing non-member boyfriends to church with them. The whole idea seemed ridiculous to me because I went to church with Destiny often enough to know how hard they worked on missionary work. Sure, Preston's dad was nice enough to me. But those older women with their prying eyes made me squirm. When I got in the building, Destiny was waiting for me in the foyer on one of the floral couches. She had on a knee-length gray sweater dress with maroon tights and black boots. "You look snuggly," I said into her ear. My eyes closed as I breathed in the intoxicating smell of her hair. We needed to spend more time alone. It seemed like I never saw her when it was just the two of us unless I was driving her somewhere or grabbing her lunch. But we hardly had time to sit and snuggle or kiss. And I missed that. I missed stargazing with her. It felt like our lives were so full that we didn't have as much time for each other as we used to have. And with parents aware of our situation, it seemed that they were more on guard of what we were doing. There always seemed to be some sort of chaperone. It was starting to get old. I needed alone time with my girl, and bad. She took my hand and laced her fingers through mine as we walked into the chapel. That was new. She was really giving the old lady something to talk about now. I watched her curls bounce with each step, and I longed to touch them, to bury my hands in her hair and breathe in her smell again. Wouldn't the old ladies disapprove if they knew what I was thinking? I couldn't help but smile to myself at the thought. Destiny led me to the pew where her family was already sitting. The missionaries came over and greeted me. Elder Grayson and Elder Peters. They were pretty cool dudes, both from somewhere out west, like Utah and Idaho or something. I'd already had all the discussions with a different set of missionaries because I lived in a different ward boundary. I was supposed to go to a different church because my house was on the other side of the boundary even though I only lived a couple of miles from Destiny. But these elders knew my situation and were friends with the elders from my own ward. They'd been asking me about baptism lately, and I hadn't given them a firm answer about it. But I'd read the Book of Mormon, and I liked studying about what Destiny believed. It made her parents happy, which wasn't a bad side benefit. Destiny's dad stepped up to the pulpit, and the elders hurried back to their seats. I took my seat next to Destiny. As bishop of the ward, Mr. Clark led the meetings every few months. Destiny said it used to make him nervous, but he was pretty used to it by now. We sang the opening song. I took the tenor line, and Destiny sang the alto line. She brushed her elbow against mine as we sang. Singing with her was magical, and I never got tired of it. After the meeting we went to Sunday school together. Destiny was in my class this year. When I went with her last fall, she was in a different class than I was. But she'd upgraded to the older class. They talked about keeping the Sabbath day holy, and how it was a day set aside for resting. The teacher emphasized that while they shouldn't go to stores because it would make other people work, they shouldn't focus so much on the don'ts as much as the do's. They talked about serving others, taking a nap, journaling, scripture study, spending time with family. Growing up, we'd often gone out to dinner on Sunday nights with my extended family. It was one of the ways we loved to bond as a family. I wouldn't want to give that up, but the idea of resting from work on Sunday sounded awesome to me. Especially the part about naps. After church, Destiny said, "Would you like to come over and have lunch with my family? Right now?" I asked. "Yep. I'd love to," I said in surprise. Whose idea had it been to invite me to their house? I hadn't even been inside their house since telling them about the doctrinal statement the night of the Valentine's banquet. "Want to ride with me?" I asked. "Sure. I'll just let my mom know," she said. Her mom was a bit hard to track down, but we eventually found her in the crowded hall, talking to another woman. The woman looked pale and wore a wig. Megan came up to the woman and stood beside her, and it clicked. I'd barely recognized her because she looked so sick and so different. This was Preston's mom who had cancer. I'd seen her sitting with his family last fall, but I hadn't noticed her sitting with them since. She must have felt well enough today to come to church. My heart went out to their family, and a deep sadness overcame me as I pictured their large family sitting on the row in front of us last fall. Their family was beautiful with young, rambunctious kids. Were those kids about to lose their mom? It made me want to hug my mom when I got home and sit and spend more time one-on-one with her. I took my mom for granted, always thinking she'd be around. But, really, how did any of us know when we might lose our health? We could be gone at any moment. I saw that myself when I was in a car accident last fall, right after Destiny and I had first gotten together. I was lucky to be alive and to walk away with nothing but a concussion and a memory lapse that lasted a few days. Destiny's mom finally stopped talking to Preston's mom and turned to Destiny. "Are you okay with me riding home with Isaac?" "That's fine, honey." "Thanks, Mom." She turned to me. "Let's go." I grinned. Finally, a moment alone with Destiny. I was seriously half tempted to take her up to my land instead of to her house, even for 5 minutes, but I didn't want to break trust with her parents when they were just starting to give Destiny more freedom when it came to me. We were walking on a tightrope, and it felt like one of us was going to topple off at any moment. One wrong move and her parents would lose trust in me, and I could be banned from driving Destiny anywhere or from being invited over to the house. I opened Destiny's door for her, and she climbed up into the cab of my truck. When I slid into the driver's seat, Destiny grabbed my tie, pulling me close to her. "Hi," I said, grinning. She looked up at me with desire in her eyes. I bent my head down to hers and kissed her. She responded hungrily, running her hands through my hair. Her lips parted, and I flicked my tongue inside her mouth. She tasted familiar and intoxicating, a combination I could never get tired of. A small moan escaped her lips, and I went wild, burying my hands in her hair, just like I'd wanted to earlier. "You amaze me," I breathed between kisses. I could seriously never get tired of this. "I know what you mean," she said against my mouth. "I love you, Destiny Clark. I love you, Isaac Robinson." My heart expanded in my chest with warmth and joy. Every moment I spent with her felt like heaven. I stroked her hair back from her face, looking into her crystalline blue eyes. They looked back at me full of love and longing. Something behind me caught her attention, and her expression shifted. "You okay?" I asked. She took in a deep breath through her nose and bit her lip. "What is it?" "Don't turn around. We should probably just go. Did your parents see us or something? Is it okay if I just don't answer that, and instead, we just go?" She looked up at me with pleading eyes. "Of course," I said. But as I backed out, I caught a glimpse of what had bothered her. An old, white, beat-up truck was parked a few spaces down from me. All the cars that were between us before had cleared out, giving anyone sitting inside the other truck a clear view of what was going on inside my truck. And the old white truck had 2 passengers inside it. Preston and his younger sister, the one who always hung out with Olivia. Destiny didn't want me to know that they'd seen us kissing. She was my girlfriend. He still knew that, right? The ride to Destiny's house was filled with a strained silence. I pressed my lips together as I navigated the windy Tennessee roads. The trees were beginning to bloom everywhere. White puffy blossoms covered trees that lined long driveways. Horses grazed in pastures surrounding spacious homes. I turned into Destiny's driveway, another long one, and crunched over the gravel that led to her home. "Are you okay?" I asked her, unable to stand a moment longer of the silence. "Yeah. I'm fine," she said in a neutral voice. I could play along with her or talk about what was actually going on with her. "I saw Preston and his sister in that truck. I told you not to look." "Well, I saw anyway. I was backing out. It wasn't really something I could miss." She let out a huff, her arms crossed. "I know there's something still going on between you and Preston," I said. "We're just friends." "Hey, listen. I'm not saying it to accuse you of anything. But I do want trust and open communication between us. I know you still have feelings for him. Those kind of feelings don't just magically disappear. I get that." She turned away from me and looked out the window into the branches that almost touched the truck. "I know this is hard on you. And I know you don't want to hurt Preston. I'm not mad at you about that." "You aren't?" she asked in a small voice. "No. I'm not. You know what I think?" "What?" she asked, turning to me. I think the fact that you don't want Preston to see us kissing means that you don't want him to get hurt. And if you ask me, that makes you a kind-hearted person. I don't want him to hurt, she said. Neither do I said. I know what it feels like to watch another guy kiss the girl you want. Because of Aspen, she said with a distant look in her eyes. Not just Aspen, I said. Me. Yes. She turned her focus to me, her eyes serious. I hurt you that night. At Michael's birthday party. Preston kissed me in front of you. The corners of my mouth turned downward as I remembered that night, the searing pain and rage I felt when I saw him kissing her. I let out a deep breath. I'm sorry, Isaac. I closed my eyes, willing the memory to go away. It's in the past. There's nothing to be sorry for. It's just something that happened. I know, but I can't stand to think that I hurt you. She lifted a soft hand to my cheek, turning my face to her. Her eyes searched mine, and I saw true sorrow in them. How many directions was her heart being pulled? How much conflict was she dealing with in her mind? I could see some of it, but Destiny was so guarded with her emotions that it was hard to get a good read on how deeply she was dealing with some of these issues. I have you now. But honestly, I just want you to be happy. If you need to figure out your feelings for Preston, I understand. Until you do, you're not going to be fully happy with me. Oh, Isaac, don't say that, she said in a pleading voice. Your happiness matters more than my feelings. My happiness is with you, she said. Please just let me enjoy that for a while. I stared at her for a long time. Okay. Ready to go inside? She asked. Yeah. Let me get your door, I said. I climbed out and walked around to the other side of the truck to help Destiny down. We walked toward the house as Michael pulled up in his car. I spotted Megan in the car with him. Is that weird for you? I murmured to Destiny. Michael and Megan? A little. But it's kind of fun, too, Destiny admitted. Has Josh dated anyone? Not really. He's had a few girls over here and there, but nothing serious. At least not that I know of. Well, it's not like Josh has anything to hide. He'd probably pick some nice Baptist girl your dad would adore. You never know what someone has to hide, I said. Destiny barked out a laugh. Yeah. I know what you mean. We climbed the stairs to the front porch and Destiny knocked on the French doors that lined the family room. Elijah opened the door, still in his church clothes. Hey there, I said. It's Elijah, right? Yep. Cool. What do you like to do for fun? Elijah shrugged. I read a lot of graphic novels, play outside, soccer's cool, too. I love soccer, too. I've been playing since first grade. How long have you been playing? About since then, he said. Do you play for Bethel Elementary intramurals, or do you play somewhere else? I play at Bethel. Right on. You play baseball, too, don't you? Elijah asked. Yep. We're just getting started up with our season. I love baseball, too. Do you play or watch? I asked. Mostly watch, but sometimes we play together as a family in the big grassy area around the start of our driveway. That's awesome. Do you guys play soccer out there, too? Oh, yeah. Plenty, Elijah said. Well, maybe I can come play with you guys sometime, I said. Elijah's eyes widened. Really? Sure. It would be fun. Olivia came into the room and sat in the recliner. Hey, Olivia, I said. Hey. How's your Sunday going? I asked. She shrugged and pulled her phone out, checking it and then putting it back into her lap with a bored expression. Her phone was a lot nicer than Destiny's. How'd she end up with a smartphone when Destiny only had a flip phone? Destiny was the only person I knew who had a flip phone. Seeing Olivia with a nicer phone made me feel sad for Destiny, and I thought about my old iPhone that I still had sitting around in my drawer. I didn't use it for anything, and since I tended to keep up on the newest version of the iPhone, even my old one was still pretty nice. At least Destiny could check her social media and email from her phone. Mr. and Mrs. Clark came into the family room. "Hey there, Isaac," Mrs. Clark said. She'd already changed into a pair of jeans and a button-down shirt. "Hi," I said. "Destiny, can you help me get lunch started?" she asked. "Is it okay if I go get changed first?" Destiny asked. "Yeah. Just hurry." "What can I do to help?" I asked, following Mrs. Clark into the kitchen. "We're making sub sandwiches." She grabbed a bag of hoagie rolls from the counter. "Do you want to slice these for me?" "Sure." She pulled out a cutting board and a bread knife and set them on the counter in front of me. I walked to the kitchen sink and rolled up the sleeves of my white shirt and scrubbed my hands. I turned around to dry my hands, and Olivia said, "Catch." She tossed me a wad of something fabric. "You might want to wear that so you don't get your nice clothes messy." I held it up an apron. It reminded me of something I'd get my dad for Father's Day. It was black with flames around the word Grill Master. "Thanks," I said, looping it over my neck and tying it behind my back. I got busy sawing through the rolls. Olivia prepared the meats and then the lettuce and tomato. Destiny appeared in the kitchen wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans. She took over slicing a tomato and pulling out condiments while Mrs. Clark pulled out paper plates and plastic forks. "We need cheese," Destiny said, going to the fridge. "Check the deli drawer," Mrs. Clark said. "Perfect," Destiny said, pulling out packages of sliced cheddar and provolone. Michael and Megan came into the kitchen. I'd almost forgotten they were around. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Megan asked, like they were already a married couple, coming back to visit her in-laws on a Sunday afternoon. "Where've y'all been?" Olivia asked. "Just talking in my car," Michael said. "Oh, talking. Right," Olivia joked. Megan's cheeks turned a bright shade of crimson. "You two want to mix up some lemonade?" Mrs. Clark asked. "Sure," Megan said, eager to have the conversation switch to food preparation instead of whatever she may or may not have been doing in Michael's car for the past half hour. Michael seemed content to ignore me for the rest of the afternoon, but the rest of the family had been friendly. Even Mr. Clark had sat down with me and asked me about the upcoming baseball season. They were trying. And that meant a lot to me. I only wished my family would try harder to accept Destiny into their lives.
Chapter 11, Destiny. Monday morning, Isaac bought me lunch at school again. We sat down at my usual table, which was now becoming Isaac's usual table as well. Today was chicken Alfredo with broccoli and a chocolate chip cookie. "Ah," Hannah said. "Isaac bought you lunch again?" "Of course, I did," he said, nudging me. "I take care of my girl. I just feel bad that I wasn't doing it sooner." "See, Destiny? I knew he would be a good boyfriend for you." "How did you know?" I asked. "You seemed so sure about it." "Because I've known Isaac my whole life. And when I met you, I just saw it, and it made sense. Like an intuition kind of thing. Plus, I didn't like Aspen. Something about her felt fishy. She came off as fake, and I knew Isaac deserved better. I met you, and I knew you were the real deal." "Even though I was a Mormon?" I asked. "That was what tipped me off," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You weren't ashamed of your beliefs. When I asked you about your church, you told me all about it. You didn't try to change the subject or get all weird. You were open and honest with me without being pushy or rude about what I believed. I wasn't used to that. Most people just try to shove their views in your face to prove they're right. Either that or they don't want to talk about it at all, because they don't want to start drama. I stared at Hannah. I didn't know what to say. I like that about you, too, Isaac said, slipping his hand under the table, entwining his fingers with mine. Hannah knows what she's talking about. His face darkened, and I wasn't sure whether he recognized it, but he'd begun to grip my hand. I followed his gaze and saw Aspen and Will walking together. The way she was looking at him was enough to turn my stomach. Her eyes sparkled, and her laugh sounded like the tinkling of a bell on Santa's sleigh. Are they together again? Hannah asked. Sure looks that way, Hudson said, taking a bite of his lunch. But who can keep track of what guy she's dating these days? She's only dated 2, Isaac said through clenched teeth. Aspen hasn't even had a boyfriend since before Thanksgiving. She and Will didn't even date that long before, I said. Well, obviously I don't know, Hudson said with a shrug. I looked over at Isaac. He still held my hand in a tight grip. Are you okay? I asked. He shook his head like he was breaking out of a trance. He released my hand and ran his fingers through his hair. He looked at me like he'd just remembered where he was, and that I was right next to him. Yeah. I'm fine, he said. Are you sure about that? Hannah asked. You look pretty shaken up. His cheeks reddened. Yeah. I'm fine. He twirled pasta around his fork and took a bite. My stomach sunk. He still had feelings for Aspen. After all this time. Was he still in love with her? I bit my lip and focused on eating my lunch. We sat in silence for the next few minutes, each of us wrapped up in our own thoughts. So if he's dating Aspen, what happened with Jessie? Hannah asked, breaking our silence. I searched the room. Jessie wasn't sitting at Will's table where she'd been for most of the school year. I spotted her sitting with the popular girls of the sophomore class. Those were the girls she left me for back in middle school. She got this makeover and started spending all her time with those girls. Caitlin, Emmy, Sophia. They had all treated me like I was beneath them. And Jessie had joined right in. Jessie and I had been best friends since she came to the school in 3rd grade. We'd had countless sleepovers, and she knew all about my longtime crush on Isaac. She'd had her own crush on him, and she was pretty mad when Isaac and I first got together. But something had gone wrong with her and Will. Or maybe Aspen just convinced him to get back together. Either way, I'd never seen Aspen so happy. Well, not since she and Isaac were dating at the beginning of the school year. Aspen was always glowy when she'd been with Isaac. It was why I worried that he still had feelings for her. He'd been so torn up about their breakup. She'd cheated on him with her best friend. I watched Jessie and her friends. All 4 sat with their heads together, and they kept looking over at Will and Aspen. Jessie might as well have had lightning shooting from her eyes at him. I wouldn't want to cross her fiery temper. I'd faced it enough. I didn't envy Aspen. Jessie had had plenty of reasons to hate Aspen. Knowing Jessie, she probably considered Aspen her biggest competition for years. It was probably why she went for Will in the first place. To one-up Aspen. It was how Jessie's mind worked. Everything was a competition, and if she wasn't on top, she was losing. Isaac finished off his lunch. He wadded up his napkin and threw it on his plate, his eyes focused on his old table. Aspen was right back in her old spot again, and it almost looked like it had at the beginning of the year when she'd been flirting with Will when Isaac wasn't looking. He'd been so trusting back then and had no idea she was cheating on him with Will. The only difference was that Isaac wasn't at their table. And I was grateful for that. I ran a hand down Isaac's muscled arm. He looked over at me, tearing his eyes away from their table. I returned his gaze with love and compassion in my heart. I hoped it shone through my eyes. I wanted him to know how much I cared for him. I hated seeing him hurt. Aspen and Will had been so terrible to him. He'd been kind and loyal to them both. And now he was reliving the pain again. He tried to hide it from me, but the hurt was all over his face, and apparent in the rigid way he sat on the bench. I took a hand and touched his clean-shaven cheek. I'm sorry, I said. For what? He whispered. That you're hurting. His shoulder slumped. You're the last person who should be apologizing. I'm not apologizing. I'm just showing sympathy and support. It's different. His eyes softened. I don't deserve you, he said. Yes, you do, Hannah retorted. You're both amazing and you deserve each other. Anyone who says otherwise will have to answer to me. Thanks, Hannah, I said with a weak smile. I just hoped Aspen was happy enough with Will that she stopped causing drama for Isaac and me. But just because a girl wished for something didn't mean she actually got it. A few nights later, after dinner, Mom and Dad called all the kids into the family room. Elijah and Brianna clamored from the back of the house where all the kids' bedrooms were, fighting over who was going to get the TV next. Michael came from the study where he was working on a research paper. Olivia came from the formal living room where she'd been playing the piano. I'd been helping Mom clean up the kitchen. I wiped off the last counter and tossed the dishcloth into the sink. I took a seat in a floral chair next to the big leather couch where the younger kids were piled up around Mom and Dad. Michael stretched out on the floor, flat on his belly. When all the kids were settled, Dad spoke. We got a letter from the school last week. The school board has decided to let us stay at the school without having to sign the doctrinal statement. Does that mean we're staying at Bethel then? Olivia asked in a hopeful voice. We'd like to hear what each of you has to say about it, Mom answered. Your father and I have prayed about it, and we haven't gotten a clear answer. What does that mean? Elijah asked. We're not sure. Maybe this is a decision we just need to make on our own. Sometimes it doesn't matter either way to God. So are we going to take a vote or something? Olivia asked. We can do that, Dad said. But we'd like to talk through the pros and cons of both situations. For instance, we could let each of you choose where you'd like to go to school, but that would make life a bit more hectic on your mom, keeping track of all your schedules. Or we could take a majority vote, and that will decide where everyone goes. I like the idea where everyone chooses, Olivia said. Part of me almost wished we could just take the majority vote so I wouldn't have to make the decision. Staying at Bethel would be awesome because I'd be able to keep all my same friends and teachers. But going to Acorn Creek would be fun because I could go to school with the Nelsons. That's really up to your mom, Dad said. She's going to be the one who will have to do all the driving. I don't mind the driving. Acorn Creek is right around the corner. I just want the kids to be happy. Elijah, how do you feel about it? Dad asked. I want to stay at Bethel, he said. But can I change my mind later if I want to? Of course, you can, Mom said. We aren't going to force any of you to go to school where you don't want to be. I want to stay at Bethel, too, Olivia said without hesitation. Brianna? Mom asked. I want to stay at Bethel. Destiny? Mom asked. You've been quiet tonight. What do you want to do? I don't know. That's okay. You have some time to think about it, Mom said. I nodded.
Chapter 12, Preston. I pulled my paintball mask over my face and clutched my gun to my side, crouching in the paintball fort. Michael called the signal for the game to start, and I aimed out the window. Destiny dashed between some trees, and I took a few shots at her, my gun splattering orange paint all over the leaves. I totally missed. I spotted her slipping from behind some bushes, and I took a few more shots. She evaded me again, disappearing behind the cedar tree. I bolted from the paintball fort and immediately got shot in the side. Ah! You got me. I turned to see Michael standing just to the side of me behind the trunk of a gnarled old tree. I put my gun over my head and walked over to the dead zone. From the sidelines, I watched Destiny zigzag from her hiding spot behind the cedar tree toward my base. She ran into the fort and grabbed the flag, making it out. She darted between bushes and barricades. 2 guys from church tried to take her down, but Michael covered her. Destiny planted the flag inside her base and called, "Game over. Masks off." She pulled her mask off and swung her braid over her shoulder. It was hot that she always wore her hair in a braid when she played paintball. It made her look tough, ready to kick butt. "Nice game," I said as she approached. "Thanks," she said, catching her breath. "Did Hannah ever show up?" "I haven't seen her," I answered. "Are we done playing for the day?" Michael asked. "After 3 games of getting shot, I'd say I'm done." I rubbed my side where I felt welts forming. The sun was setting, and I was starving. We grabbed our gear and headed down the path in the woods that led to the fire pit. I fell into step beside Destiny. "Where do you think Hannah is?" I asked. "Probably with Evan," she said. "They're still dating?" I asked. "Yeah. They seem to be going strong. She's been glued to his side for the past several weeks." "Why are you saying it like it's a bad thing?" "Let's just say I'm not Team Evan. He seemed like a nice enough guy to me," I said. "I don't think he makes her happy." Her brow furrowed. Was it me, or did it seem like she was leaving something out? That's not good. If he doesn't make her happy, then why is she spending all her time with him? Destiny turned, a strange expression on her face. She scoffed quietly to herself and shook her head. "That was weird." "What?" I asked. "With Hannah, there's always more than meets the eye." "That's not cryptic. Did you know when I first met her, she didn't tell me she was Isaac's cousin and let me think they weren't related? Why is that such a big deal?" I didn't get it. Destiny's cheeks turned pink, and she turned away from me. "Never mind. So, whatever happened with the doctrinal statement?" I asked. "I don't know, yet," she said. "My grandparents came over the other night to talk to us about it. They're going to try to convince the school board to drop it, but I doubt anyone will listen." "I didn't tell you," she said. "They're letting us stay." "So did they get rid of the entire thing then?" I asked. "No. They're keeping it. They're just making an exception for our family." "What? How can they keep that thing around? I don't even know how they're allowed to make you guys sign statements like that. I don't even know how Bethel is allowed to make you guys sign statements like that. It's a private school. They can do all kinds of things. It's their right. If we don't like it, we can leave." "So why don't you leave then?" I asked. "I'm thinking about it." "You are?" I asked. "My parents said we can choose to stay if we want." Destiny plucked a pine needle from a nearby tree, folding and crumpling it into a tiny bundle. She brought it to her nose and breathed deeply before releasing it, watching the bundle pop out into a crimped version of its original shape. I smiled. I'd seen her do it many times before. It was like she wanted to breathe in a bit more of the forest. Destiny came alive when she was around the trees. If I didn't know better, I'd say she was part wood sprite. "I wish you'd come to Acorn Creek," I surprised myself with the admittance. "You do?" she asked. "Sure. I think you'd like it there. Our choir isn't as good, but you'd still have fun. We have a drama club, too." A strange expression crossed her features. "Primus," she said. I didn't even stop to think I'd be giving that up if I went to Acorn Creek. I silently cursed myself for bringing it up. By trying to help her feel better about going to Acorn Creek, I'd only encouraged her to fight to stay at Bethel. So I changed the subject. "Where's Isaac?" I'd been wondering it all night. There was no way she hadn't invited him. Maybe his absence meant that something was going on between them. A small hope rose in my chest at the thought. He had to work. A dark look loomed across her face. The hope strengthened. Were they having problems? We walked into the clearing where Michael and Hudson crouched by a big pile of dead branches with a small flame catching on the dry wood. 2 figures approached in the darkening twilight. As they walked closer, I recognized them as Hannah and Evan. Destiny was right. Hannah didn't look happy. She wasn't looking at Evan or touching him. And she wasn't her usual chatty self. She sat on a log near the fire while Evan got lemonade. She took a cup from him and then turned her entire body away from him as she sipped from her paper cup. He sat next to her with an exasperated look on his face. I took the other seat next to Hannah and nudged her. Better late than never. She narrowed her eyes at me. Hey, that's my line. Oh, really? It's true, Destiny said. It's what she says when I'm late to class. Great minds think alike, I said. Hannah flashed me a flirty smile that sent a strange chill down my spine. That was unexpected. I knew she had a boyfriend, but could it be possible that Hannah still liked me? The way she looked at me made me think she might. I'd known her since she went to Acorn Creek last year and she had been in choir with Megan. I'd heard rumors she had a crush on me, and I'd definitely gotten that vibe when she slept over with Destiny last fall. But I didn't date girls who weren't Mormon, so that was that. This guy knows what's what, Hannah said, still holding that smile. Pretty much. Destiny shrugged like it was common knowledge. Pride swelled in my chest at the compliment, even though she had said it nonchalantly. Destiny and I were just talking about the doctrinal statement, I told Hannah. Hannah's shoulders stiffened. Destiny knows how I feel about it. And how's that? I asked. I told her she should go to Acorn Creek. My brow lifted in surprise. Acorn Creek? I thought you'd want Destiny to keep going to Bethel with you. Nah, I'm over Bethel. Hannah flipped one of her braids over her shoulder. I'm only going there because my parents are forcing me. It's only a matter of time before I do something bad enough to get myself kicked out and I can go to Acorn Creek again. Destiny snorted, holding back laughter. I furrowed my brow. Somehow, I'd missed the joke. So, Destiny should decide now to leave Bethel. See? There. It's decided. Hannah gave her a triumphant smile. Hannah, you're a nut, Destiny said. I told you I was crazy. You were warned. I like crazy, though, Destiny said. I'm getting a hot dog, I announced, standing up. The fire blazed, and we huddled around the table to skewer hot dogs onto our roasting sticks. When our hot dogs had turned perfectly charred from the fire, we went back to the table to grab buns and condiments. Destiny's hand brushed mine as we reached for the mustard bottle at the same time. Electricity shot up my arm, and she jerked her hand away like it had burned her. Sorry, I said. You can have it first. She grabbed the bottle and lined her hot dog with yellow. She liked her hot dogs exactly like I did. No ketchup. Mustard only. She handed me the bottle, and I created a matching yellow line on my hot dog. We finished those hot dogs, and I went back for a second one. When I returned to the fire, I found Destiny sitting forward with her hands propped under her chin and her eyes miles away as she stared into the fire. Still worried about the doctrinal statement? I asked. She shrugged, frowning at the dark leaves scattered on the ground. More than anything, I wanted to wrap my arms around her to give her some comfort. Like it used to be. It had been as easy as breathing to be with her. But she wouldn't let me hold her. Because she was with him. Destiny was upset that Hannah was unhappy staying with Evan, but Destiny seemed unhappy with Isaac, too. When would she ever see that Isaac wasn't right for her?
Chapter 13, Destiny. Olivia came down from the house. She didn't like paintball, but she liked campfires where Hudson was a participant. She'd curled her hair and wore a green chunky sweater and a cute knit beanie. She'd captured the campfire chic look to perfection. Where's Isaac? Hannah asked, leaning on my shoulder. He texted me this morning and told me he had to work. You don't seem very happy about that, she said. I'm not. He promised he was coming, and he totally bailed on me. I saw him at the house before Evan came to pick me up. I thought he was wrapping up. How long was he there? He's been there all day. I ground my teeth together to keep from screaming. Ever since he'd seen that Aspen and Will were back together, he'd become distant. Evan brought Hannah a roasting stick with a hot dog speared on the end. "Here," he said. "Oh, thanks," she mumbled. She took the stick and stuck it into the pile of branches where the fire had caught. He sat next to her, whispering soothing words to her, rubbing her back. At least he was trying. It couldn't be easy for him to be with Hannah. She was an emotional mess, and he was still just a kid. Most guys dealing with a pregnant chick were much more mature and were more committed because they'd planned on having the baby. Even then it was still hard. I still remembered when my mom was pregnant with Brianna. Even though I was only 7 or 8, I remember how hard it was for Dad to deal with her emotional outbursts. One day she'd just started crying because she'd overcooked the broccoli and it was mushy. I walked over to the food table and found a roasting stick near the packs of hot dogs scattered around the table. "It's been too long since we've done this," Preston said, spearing another hot dog. He'd had so many I'd lost count. "Yeah, since last fall. Usually, we're better about getting in more paintball games during the winter." "It's been a tough winter," Preston said. "Yeah. It has," I agreed. "How's your mom doing, by the way?" He shrugged. "She's going through chemo right now. Her hair's pretty much gone." "I'm so sorry," I said, shaking my head. I'd heard my mom saying something about it the other day. "I don't know how you guys are doing it." "It's not like we get a choice," he said. "It just gets thrown at us. We can either curl up in a ball and not face life, or we just move forward. We can have a bad attitude about it, or we can choose to be grateful for what we have." I turned to Preston and looked into his bright green eyes, respect swelling in my heart. "You have a lot of strength in you." Preston stared back at me for a long time before saying in a low voice, "Why are you still with him?" I held his gaze, my nails digging into my palms, breathing shallowly. "Because I love him." But I couldn't say it aloud. Because I still had feelings for Preston, too. He looked away, rotating his hot dog in the fire. "I'm sorry. I get it. You chose to be with him and want to be loyal. But is it wise? You know I care about you, right? And I don't just mean romantically." My breath caught at his thinly veiled admittance of still having romantic feelings for me. "You've been in my life for a long time, and you mean a lot to me. I watched you the first time you broke up with him. Do you know how much it hurt to see you in that kind of pain?" I didn't like the way he said, "the first time," like there would be another breakup in my future. "It's only a matter of time before he does something else to hurt you," Preston said. Michael came back with a bun for his charcoaled hot dog. "He's right. Do you know what it's like watching you back with him? I feel like a time bomb is ticking down until the next time my sister is sitting in the treehouse in deep depression, writing poetry about how this guy hurt her. You don't know that." The words exploded from my mouth. I was being ambushed on all sides, and they were laying out my deepest fears for everyone to see. Michael's eyes hardened. "Will you trust me on this one?" I've been in enough locker room discussions to tell how most guys' minds work. Isaac's about to graduate, and then he'll have all these college girls available to date. Save yourself the hurt and break it off now before you get in any deeper than you already are. I stared back at my brother, my mouth hanging open, and threw out the only defense I could think of. "You can't just stand here and act like you can tell what Isaac will do. You don't know him like I do." Like magic, Hannah appeared by my side. "Destiny's right. You don't know Isaac. And he wouldn't do that to her. He's loyal to the core." "Loyal?" Michael said incredulously. "He used to be my best friend. And when my family converted, he stopped talking to me the minute he realized he couldn't get me to go back to being a Baptist." "And what about what he did to Destiny?" "He wasn't loyal to her. He was using her to dig up dirt on the Mormons." His words hit me hard. That was before I spat. But the seed of doubt was planted. What if he was right? How well did I actually know Isaac, even after what we'd been through? Had he truly changed this time around? Were his reasons for wanting to be Mormon genuine? Look. Michael's eyes softened. I don't want to see you hurt. That's all we're trying to say. We care about you. The only people hurting Destiny are the ones telling her to break up with her boyfriend, Hannah said. Why can't you let her be happy? I second what Hannah says, Hudson interjected. Destiny needs to figure this stuff out for herself. If she's happy dating Isaac, let her be happy. If it doesn't work out, then whatever. She can deal with that if it ever happens. You're all standing here talking about the future when you don't have all the facts. You don't have to trust Isaac, but you should at least trust Destiny. It's her life. Let her figure stuff out on her own. Figure stuff out on my own? I had no idea what I was doing. Maybe Preston and Michael were right, and it was only a matter of time before Isaac left me for college girls. In the past week, he'd put more focus on Aspen dating Will than he had on me. I wasn't a priority in his life. He hadn't even come to my paintball game when he'd promised he'd be here. He picked work over me again, and he didn't care that Preston would have me all to himself. I'd been so caught up in what I'd wanted that I wasn't willing to see reality. I shoved a marshmallow onto my skewer and took it over to the fire, where I sat on a log and jabbed it into the dying flames. And wished for answers.
Chapter 14, Isaac. We spent the next week in Primus digging into rehearsals. We'd moved class to the chapel and spent a lot of our time milling around, figuring out the blocking of who would be where on the stage. Today, Destiny and I lounged on a pew while we waited our turn. Across the room, Aspen looked at Will with a blissful expression. Anger rushed through me. Why were they allowed to be so happy? How was that remotely fair? I'm sick of seeing them together, I said under my breath. Who? She asked. Aspen and Will, I muttered. It hurts you to see them together. It was a statement, not a question. I held back a grimace. I hadn't wanted Destiny to know how much it bothered me. I shouldn't have said anything. I already knew. Of course, she did. She was perceptive like that. I could tell it bothered her, but I didn't know how to erase my hurt. Hurt was hurt. I didn't choose to have it. It just came. It was messy, merciless, these feelings that bombarded you out of nowhere, knocking the wind out of you. She could have at least broken up with me before she started sneaking around with my best friend. Catching them making out in a parking lot wasn't something I could forget easily. I need volunteers to help with scenery over the next few weeks, Mr. Bird announced. Can I get a show of hands? Destiny and Aspen raised their hands simultaneously. Great. Destiny. Aspen. Anyone else? We could use at least 3 more. That would be awkward. I put my hand up. Isaac. Hannah. I turned to see her lower her hand. Green and Sydney also volunteered, and Mr. Bird seemed satisfied enough to stop. If you 6 want to get together right now to set up times to meet while we run through a few songs, that would be great. We gathered in the corner of the first few rows of seats in the chapel. I looked around the group. We were split down the middle, my old friends and my new. What times are best for you guys? I asked. Aspen spoke first. My schedule is busy. I scrolled through the calendar on my phone. Can you guys do Thursdays after school or maybe Saturday mornings? Aspen tapped her pen against her lips. I can make Thursdays work and probably Saturdays. I can ask to have my schedule changed at work, Sydney added. It shouldn't be a problem. The rest of the group also said those times worked for them. Good. I looked around. Does anyone know what we're supposed to be building? We'll have to talk with Mr. Bird after class. In the meantime, we should exchange numbers to set up a group text so we can send reminders, Aspen said. We all wrote our numbers on a paper, and Aspen took a picture of it. Okay, I'll send this picture to everyone. And I can handle reminder texts, she said. Destiny hung back. Was she still intimidated by Aspen? I watched them interact with each other. They weren't meeting each other's eyes, so there was obviously still tension between them. Are we good here? I asked. After we reached a consensus, we split up to head to our places with the already singing choir.
Chapter 15, Destiny. We sang one more song before class ended. I sat and let the music envelope me. The blending of the harmony of the three parts beneath the soprano's melody mesmerized me. Tears formed in my eyes. Would I ever be able to give up this choir? What was I thinking? Was it even a question? How could I ever give up this choir? Why would I? Especially when I had the choice. I looked around at the members in the choir around me, at all their faces as we sang. The people who had mocked me openly for my religion. Aspen, who had started rumors about me. Jessie, who had betrayed me as a friend, dumping me for more popular girls. Will, who had plotted to hurt not only me, but my family and others who believed differently from him. Josh, who had ridiculed me on the bus in front of all those boys. So many of them had hurt me. Stabbed me in the back. Poured punch all over me. Tried to steal my boyfriend. I could run away from all of them, but more bullies would come. At least I knew what I was dealing with here. I'd gotten better at dealing with their tactics. I didn't know what I'd face at a public high school, and there was no money to send me to another private school. I doubted Grandmama and Granddaddy would be willing to pay for any school other than Bethel. But the real reason to stay was all around me at that very moment. It was Primus. The choir was a dream come true for me. If it weren't for Primus, I probably wouldn't have ever had a reason to date Isaac. Primus brought us together. It was when we were cast together as Marius and Eponine that everything fell into place for us. The song ended and we put our music back into the pockets of our black choir folders. I closed my folder and looked over at Isaac. He caught my gaze, and he must have seen something different in my face, because his brow lifted in curiosity. The bell rang and Mr. Bird called us to the front to get our t-shirts for the trip. I stepped down from my spot on the second row and joined the crowd moving to pick out the size they wanted from the table at the front of the room. When I got close enough to the table, I picked out a small of the neon yellow shirt and tucked it under my arm. I moved through the crowd to the cubbies where we kept our choir folders. Everything okay? Isaac asked, tucking in beside me to put his folder away. His spot was closer to the bottom since his last name started with an R, so he crouched to get his folder in its slot. Let's talk in a minute, I told him. Want to walk me to class? Yeah. We left the room and he pulled me around the corner, his eyes intense. I've decided to stay at Bethel. I thought that might be it. What? You had this look on your face while we were singing. It was like you were lost in thought. It was like you were realizing that you wouldn't be able to live without Primus. I gave him a sheepish smile. That's pretty much exactly what was going through my mind. I must be doing something right because it's like I'm actually starting to get you now, Isaac said. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, giving him a playful shove. You're tough to read sometimes. Well, most of the time. He tapped one of my temples. It's that introvert brain of yours. You keep everything hidden. Is that a bad thing? I asked. He laughed. Let's just say it makes you more intriguing. I look at it like a challenge, and you know I'm a bring-it-on kind of guy. Oh really? I said, giggling. Really, really, he said. So tell me, was it just Primus that went into this big decision of yours? Mostly. What keeping you from making a decision? He asked. I looked away. I wasn't that proud of my answer. What is it? I looked back at him. I thought that if I went to Acorn Creek, I'd be escaping all the people who've hurt me here. Isaac's expression darkened. I'm sorry that I was part of that group at one time. I wasn't including you in that list, I insisted. What changed your mind? He asked. I realized that there are bullies everywhere. At least I know what I'm up against here. I could be walking into anything at Acorn Creek. A look of genuine sorrow came over Isaac. I hate it that you've had to deal with any of that at Bethel. I should have done more to stop the bullying. They were going to make those choices either way, Isaac. But I'm the student body president. I feel responsible. I should have spoken to them about kindness. You still can, I pointed out. That's true, he said. And you have tried. I remember when you talked to us about forgiveness. You've done the best you could do. I've seen how hard you've worked to unite our school. It wasn't good enough, he said with determination in his eyes. As long as we have the doctrinal statement, we're teaching our student body that it's okay to exclude people who don't believe like we do. Then keep fighting, I said. Part of me wonders what the point even is. I'm about to graduate. I can still talk to my dad, but ultimately it won't be part of my life anymore. Maybe that's just something I'm going to have to accept. Maybe, I said. But not yet. It's only March. You still have 2 months to make a difference. All you have to do is your best.
Chapter 16, Isaac. The next morning at seminary, Destiny's mood seemed to be worse. She even snapped at me a few times. I'd never seen her so cranky. Preston looked over at us with a raised eyebrow, and I almost asked him out into the hall so I could punch him in the face. I'd had a long week and was regretting taking on the extra project helping with scenery for Les Mis. Aspen had been texting us non-stop about her ideas, and it was grating on my nerves. I hadn't had coffee for days, and if I didn't get some soon, I thought I would lose my mind. When class ended, Preston was all over Destiny, teasing her and making her giggle. When I walked over to them, she looked at me, and her face darkened. "What's wrong?" I asked. Her expression had changed so abruptly it was like sunshine had become a storm cloud in a split second. "I'm a little frustrated, to be honest." I frowned and pulled her around the corner, away from Preston. "What's wrong? Did I do something?" She turned to me with the rudest look I'd ever seen on her face. "Actually, yes. How is it you have time to pick up an extra project for choir when you're picking up so many hours at work you can't come to my paintball game?" Her question took me off guard, and for a moment no answer came. Did she mean the scenery project for Les Mis? You can totally find time when Aspen's part of the project. Aspen had been a little too friendly in some of her texts last night, and I'd noticed that Destiny hadn't taken part in the conversation much. But her allegation was unfair and untrue. What does she have to do with anything? She has to do with everything. I know you still want her. What the heck, Destiny? I swallowed down the guilt threatening to rise. You're not denying it. She put her hands on her hips. I'm not stupid. I see the way your eyes follow her down the hall. What's gotten into you? My stress levels were off the chart right now, and the last thing I needed was her accusing me of wanting Aspen. Couldn't Destiny see how much I cared about her? Nothing. I'm not the one pining after my ex. Oh really? Is that true? I said in mock surprise with a healthy dose of sarcasm. Because if you're going to accuse me of wanting my ex, pay attention to what you're doing first. Her mouth fell open in shock. I hadn't meant to bring up Preston, but having Destiny accuse me of having feelings for my ex when she was doing the same thing was too much to take. You are such a jerk. I'm a jerk. You're doing exactly the same thing you're accusing me of doing, which I'm not, by the way. What do you want from me, Destiny? I want to spend more time with you. But you're never around. Never around? I curled my hands into fists and gritted my teeth to keep from yelling. I get up early and go to seminary with you every day. We eat lunch together every day. That's not good enough for you? No. It's not. I know you have more time on your hands, but you're not making me a priority in your life. I can't remember the last time you took me out. You keep saying you're going to take me to Smoky Bones for lunch, but you haven't even done that yet. When was the last time we've been alone for more than just a few minutes? Also, I can't remember the last time you've kissed me more than just a peck. Listening to you complain isn't encouraging me to want to kiss you right now. You call that listening? It's like you're ignoring everything I'm trying to say. I'm done. I threw my hands up in the air. I can't take this anymore, Destiny. I stormed off to my truck. I needed coffee and fast. And I needed to get away from this fight before I said anything worse. Where are you going? She called after me. I almost shouted over my shoulder that I was going to buy myself a huge cup of coffee, but I clamped my mouth shut and left her standing in the parking lot to find her own ride to school. As I backed out of my spot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Michael was pulling Destiny into a hug, and Preston was standing close by. Had they heard our entire fight? I tried to pull Destiny away for privacy, but we'd gotten so heated they probably still heard us. I pounded my steering wheel and yelled out in frustration. What had I just done?
Chapter 17, Destiny. I turned from Isaac to see Preston and Michael approaching me. Isaac just broke up with me. We heard everything, Preston said, his eyes solemn. Michael's arms wrapped around me like that would somehow shield me from Isaac's words. It wasn't working. I was so mad at Isaac. I can't believe he treated me like that. I climbed into Michael's car and pulled my knees up to my chin. Are you going to buckle up? I dropped my feet to the floor and pulled my seatbelt across my body. You were right all along, Michael. It was just a matter of time before Isaac finally did it. Michael didn't say anything, but his jaw was set, and he kept his eyes focused on the road as we drove. At least he wasn't shoving "I told you so" in my face. We passed the gas station, and I spotted Isaac's truck parked in front of the convenience store. I looked away. I didn't want to see him coming out. We drove the rest of the way to Bethel in blessed silence, and I could have hugged Michael for it. When I got to my locker, Hannah ambushed me. What's going on with you and Isaac? I eyed her suspiciously. How do you know about that? Isaac hadn't even had a chance to make it to school, yet. She held up her phone. The display showed a text from Isaac. Destiny and I got into a fight. Please don't talk to her about it. We didn't just get into a fight. We broke up. What? Hannah put her hands on her hips. You need to spill. Now. I eyed her warily. I don't want you talking to him about this. I won't. I didn't believe her for a second, but my shoulders slouched in resignation. What did it matter if she talked to Isaac? With how public our fight had been, it wasn't exactly a secret. He's not making time for me. All he does is work. He couldn't come to our paintball game, but then he was so eager to take on the Les Mis scenery project. I just snapped. Hannah cocked her head to the side in confusion. Why would the scenery project make you snap? Because I know he only joined because Aspen's in it. That's bogus. He could have joined because he wants to help. Or he wants to spend more time with you. Did you ask him? I shook my head, unwilling to believe Hannah. Hadn't she seen the way they were behaving in those texts last night? It was the last straw. It doesn't matter now. He can have her now because we're through. You're just overreacting. And I can tell you for a fact that Isaac doesn't want Aspen. At all. I'm sure you guys will be fine. No. You weren't there. Isaac was so mad. He broke things off in front of everyone at seminary. Well, not everyone, but in front of enough of the right people. The same people who told me the breakup was bound to happen eventually. And deep down, I'd known they were right. I stared out my bedroom window into trees with tiny leaves unfurling from pale green buds. It reminded me of my dream where Isaac had sung to me in the hammock with the dogwoods and redbuds blooming all around us. It was almost that time of year. He'd promised that when the trees bloomed, he'd take me out there and bring my dream to life. I tried to push the unwelcome thoughts from my mind. We weren't going out there. He hadn't even sung to me or held me in his arms in a long time. And now it wasn't ever going to happen. I remembered the morning after I'd had the dream. I'd been dating Preston, and I was so ashamed that I'd been having those kinds of thoughts about another guy while I was in a relationship. But lately, I'd been doing the same thing. It wasn't hard to do. I saw Preston all the time, and every day he looked better than the last. My phone buzzed on my desk next to me. A text from Preston. My heart leaped in my chest. It was like he'd sensed I'd been thinking about him. "Have you been in the treehouse lately?" That was random. "No." "Why?" I punched in the response quickly, tapping my pencil on the desk. Staring at my phone like that would somehow make him reply faster. The phone buzzed again. "Just wondering." Winky face. Winky face? What was that supposed to mean? I jumped from my chair, leaving my homework behind. "Where are you going, Destiny?" Mom asked as I passed through the kitchen. "The treehouse," I said over my shoulder as I opened the back door. "Just be back up at the house in time for dinner," she said. I stomped through the patches of newly grown grass as I headed through my huge backyard toward the treehouse, climbed the long flight of steps, gripping the 2x4 railing my dad had built, and pushed open the rickety wooden door. I hadn't been up here in months. Sitting in the middle of the cot was a small, square box, covered in pink and silver-striped wrapping paper, topped with a pink bow. My breath caught in my throat. Preston. I sank down onto the cot, a memory flashing through my mind. I was there on the cot, crushing grief weighing on my chest. Strong arms wrapped around me. Isaac had betrayed me. And Preston was there. He had always been there, waiting for me. I tore off the paper, revealing a simple white box. I lifted the lid and squealed. A delicate silver snowflake rested in white cotton. Rhinestones glittered up at me. It was a necklace. I pulled it out. It dangled from my fingers, sparkling in the sun rays shooting through the treehouse window. A folded slip of paper sat at the bottom of the box. I flipped it open. "Destiny. I saw this, and it reminded me of you." Preston. A snowy day in the Smoky Mountains. Tumbling in the snow, with Preston's arms around me. Landing on the ground. His warm lips on mine. Heaven. Joy. Starbursts of light. I wrapped my arms around myself, wishing I could stay in that moment forever. Freezing with snow shoved up my back, but warm with Preston surrounding me. His smell enveloping me. The way his lips felt on mine. He was an amazing kisser. Would I ever kiss him again? Footsteps climbed the stairs outside. My heart thumped. Who was out there? The door pushed open before I had a chance to hide the evidence of the gift. Preston stepped inside, wearing a white V-neck t-shirt that clung to his well-built frame. He didn't say a word. He wrapped his arms around me, and I melted against his rock-hard chest. I'd forgotten how right it felt to be here, nestled against my friend. But he was more than a friend, and I'd missed this like crazy. He'd been there for me when I'd been hurting. And I'd betrayed him when he'd needed me most. I squeezed him tighter. I hoped he knew how much I cared about him. I wanted to erase all his pain with my hug. I looked up into his eyes. Could he see how much I cared and how sorry I was? But then he did something I wasn't expecting. He bent his head and brushed his lips against mine. My head screamed at me to stop, to push him away. It was too soon. I would get hurt again. But fireworks were exploding in my chest, and his lips were incredibly soft. And my lips had a mind of their own. I closed my eyes and kissed him back, savoring the feel of his lips on mine. Preston was everywhere. His familiar smell, blended with his new cologne, filled my senses. His hand stroked down my bare arms, sending tingles down my spine as he kissed me. I lost myself in the kiss. It pulled me under, and I was gone. He was the one to step away first. Hey. I opened my eyes lazily, still under his spell. Hey, I slurred. You like the necklace? I love it. Thank you, I murmured. Want me to help you put it on? Sure. He took it from my hand. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. My brain was still spinning from his kiss. Gently, he brushed my hair to the side, his hands warm on the back of my neck as he fastened the clasp. It looks nice on you. He pulled me down to the cot to sit. Eyes half closed, I leaned against him, reveling in the feeling of him near, his care, his love. Something vibrated against my hip, and I jumped up. My stupid flip phone was buzzing its way across the cot, and a familiar name lit up the screen. I stared at the display. What did Isaac want?
Chapter 18, Preston. Destiny backed away from me. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. What's wrong? I'm not ready for this. It's too soon. Look, Destiny. Kissing you was the only way to see if you still had feelings for me. I don't want you to feel bad about it for a second. Not to mention I owed Isaac one. He'd kissed my girl, and I was only taking back what I'd had before he'd taken it from me. The difference was that I'd waited until they'd broken up. And he was bad for her. He was dragging her down, and I had to stop it before she changed her mind about him or he got his claws into her again. She stared at me, searching my face like my words were sinking into her mind. What am I going to tell him? You don't have to tell him a thing. He's the one who broke up with you. But he just called. What if he wants to make up? Is that what you want? She turned away from me. I don't know. Do you want me to talk to him for you? I don't think that's a good idea. She tapped a finger against her lips distractedly. What would you tell him exactly? What do you want me to tell him? One of her hands burrowed into her thick waves, and she paced the tiny area in the treehouse. I have no idea. What do you want? I asked again. She stopped pacing and looked at me. Her bottom lip caught between her teeth, and her eyes roved over me as she breathed heavily. I couldn't hold back a second longer. I crossed the short span between us and took her face in my hands, kissing her hungrily, like I'd wanted to for several weeks. She pulled away, gasping. Her eyes searched mine. I haven't had a kiss like that in a long time. His loss. I went back in for more, and she responded with enthusiasm. This time, she buried her hands in my hair and pulled me toward her. Destiny. Olivia's voice called from far away, back at the house probably. She pushed away from me, her eyes wide. I have to go to dinner. She ran her fingers through her hair, taming it down. It had gotten a bit wild. Your lips are a little swollen, I said with a laugh. You might want to splash water on your face or something. Shut up. She shoved my shoulder playfully. Olivia called out for Destiny again. Destiny poked her head out of the door. Coming, she called back. I watched her take the box and the wrapping paper with her as she darted out the door. Was she going to sneak the necklace by them or would she show it to them without hiding what had happened between us? And what did that incredible kissing mean for the two of us? I didn't know if she was just having a fun time kissing me, or if she would be willing to stay with me now. But I did know I wouldn't stop fighting until she was mine and mine alone.
Chapter 19, Destiny. After supper, I stared at my phone, debating whether I should call Isaac or not. He deserves to be heard out, my heart whispered. Before I could chicken out, I opened my phone and dialed his number. His voice rushed out as soon as the call connected. I owe you an apology. I'm sorry for the way I talked to you this morning. Can I take you out for dessert to make up for it? I bit down on the pad of my thumb until I almost drew blood. Isaac was acting like we hadn't broken up at all. You said we were done. A heavy silence fell over the line. I meant I was done with the conversation. What did you think I meant? That we were done with our relationship. No. Isaac blurted. I didn't mean that at all. I lost my temper, and I needed to cool off. I buried my face in my hands. This complicated everything. We're still okay, right? Hesitation crept into Isaac's voice. I was going to throw up. I wouldn't exactly say that. Destiny, I'm such an idiot. What can I do to make it better? Can you come over? My voice wavered. I'll be there in 15. He sounded so confident. Like he expected to fix everything with a piece of cheesecake and an apology. But it was too late for that. And I blamed myself for it. I had jumped to conclusions and believed what I wanted to believe. I'd rushed into Preston's arms way too easily after what I thought was my breakup. A hard truth stared me in the face: my heart wasn't ready to be in a relationship with either one of them. I called Preston. Can you come over? I asked when he answered. Right now? Yeah. Sure. What's up? He sounded a little nervous. Is it okay if we talk about it when you get here? Okay. My phone shut with a click, and I sat frozen on my bed for a few minutes before I finally stared down at the packaging next to my pillow. I took the necklace off and placed it in my jewelry box. I buried the wrapping paper underneath some of Olivia's school papers in the wastebasket next to my desk. Then I pulled on a pair of boots and headed to the front porch. A few minutes later, Isaac's black truck came around the bend in our long driveway, its engine roaring. I walked down to him before he came too close to the house. By the time I reached his truck, he had parked and was climbing out. He wrapped me in a hug. I'm so sorry, Destiny, he said into my hair. I pulled away stiffly. I promise we will spend more time together. I've been too busy with work and Les Mis. Can we start this day over? I stared up at him, at a loss for words. I shook my head. Finally, I squeezed out the words, I can't. His brow furrowed in confusion. Why not? Preston. Recognition dawned in his eyes, and he stepped away from me. Did something happen between you two? I avoided his gaze. I need to be fair to you. What's going on, Destiny? I bit my bottom lip and looked up at him. I still have feelings for Preston. Isaac met my eyes with a serious expression and something else I couldn't quite read. I know. He wants me back. Isaac took a step further back and raked a hand through his hair. Then, with an intense look, he turned to face me and came closer. Are you going back to him? Not today. What do you mean by that? It means I can't tell what my heart wants right now. Especially not after that kiss. But Isaac didn't need to know about that. Preston's old white truck came up the driveway. Isaac turned around. Did you invite him over here? I dug the toe of my boot into the gravel and avoided his gaze. Preston climbed from his truck and slammed the heavy door. Isaac. Preston greeted him with a stony expression. I wasn't expecting to find you here. I could say the same to you. Isaac kept his feet planted and met Preston's stare. I asked both of you to come over. But now that they were in front of me, I was questioning my sanity. Preston's eyes drifted up to the windows behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and groaned inwardly. Olivia and Brianna had their faces pressed to the living room window like they were watching one of Olivia's favorite Korean dramas. Ignoring my sisters, I turned back to the two guys in front of me. Here's the thing. I care a lot about both of you. Too much. But I can't have a boyfriend right now. I'm confused, Isaac interjected. Why is Preston part of this conversation? He just is. A side of Preston's mouth pulled up. Thankfully, Isaac didn't notice. The last thing I needed was Isaac seeing that smug expression. I need a break from both of you. I feel so mixed up. I need time to sort out my emotions. Okay? Isaac drew the word out. So, we aren't getting dessert? I shook my head. Not tonight. My lungs felt like they couldn't pull in enough oxygen. I need to go back in the house. I fought against the lump forming in my throat over how I'd just hurt them both. I'm sorry. I turned and fled before they could see the tears streaking down my cheeks.
Chapter 20, Isaac. What did you do? I growled. I was helping her forget you, Preston shot back. The last thing Destiny needs is you messing with her head. You've already hurt her enough. I won't stand around and let that happen again. Preston had tried snatching her right from under my nose, and now she didn't want either of us. I wanted to punch him in the face, beat him to a pulp. You have no business messing with my relationship. From what I saw, you broke that relationship off yourself this morning. I was just making sure she was okay. He gave me a smug grin. I froze. Why was he smiling like that? Pieces fell into place in my mind. Destiny acting so shocked when I told her I hadn't broken up with her. She should have sounded relieved or mad. But she hadn't. She'd sounded guilty. And then the sudden decision to stop dating either of us. Inviting Preston over but clamming up about why he was present. My mind reeled. Had something gone down between them? He'd seen us fighting, and he must have pounced on the opportunity to move in on Destiny when she was vulnerable. And she'd fallen for it. I pictured his hands on my girl, and my hands curled into fists. I wanted to rip him to shreds. I had to leave before I did something I'd regret, like beat Preston to a bloody pulp, so I jumped into my truck and sped down the gravel driveway. I was the world's biggest idiot. I'd let Destiny slip right between my fingers. My bitter laugh echoed in the cab of my truck. At the stoplight, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the loudest, angriest metal song I could find. Guitars screeched through the Bose speakers in my truck. I screamed along with the song. When the light turned green, I gunned my engine. All those mornings, getting up when it was still dark. Well, forget her. No more of that crap. I was so exhausted from it that I could sleep for days. And she didn't appreciate any of it. Instead, she was doing who knows what with Preston. He must have been planning his move for a long time. I'd kissed his girlfriend during their date, and he'd wanted revenge. What had he done? Cornered her and sweet-talked her into kissing him. Was that what he'd done when we broke up in November? Incensed, I parked the truck in my driveway. No one was home, and I was glad for it. I wanted to scream and punch holes into the walls. Instead, I took a few deep breaths and went into the kitchen to find food. A search through the fridge revealed a big container of leftover pot roast from Sunday night's dinner. I piled all of it on a plate and heated it up. When the microwave beeped, I pulled out the steaming plate and ate every scrap of meat. I jogged up the stairs and plugged my headphones into my laptop. Pulling up the playlist I usually listened to when I was ready to kick butt at the gym, I opened the document for my big history paper. I threw myself into the work until my mind was numb. I didn't close my laptop until well past midnight. Ripping off the headphones, I put both the laptop and headphones under my bed and pulled the covers over my head. Tears welled in my eyes, and small sobs shook my body as I drifted off to sleep.
Chapter 21, Preston. Brinley and Megan were geniuses. I owed my sisters big time. The new cologne, the tighter shirts, the jeans that fit better, and best of all, the necklace. All their ideas had worked. I'd have to treat them to ice cream. Not only had I ended up having one of the best kisses of my life, but Destiny had turned Isaac down when he came crawling back. I didn't have her yet, but I was much closer than I'd been a week ago. I pushed open the glass doors of the church and stepped out into the early morning air. Someone grabbed me and pulled me behind the tall bushes surrounding the church. "Hands off, dude." I shoved Isaac back a few steps. What do you want? I want you to leave Destiny alone. The guy was nuts. Why should I? I dusted off my jacket. Because you're not playing fair. Oh, and you're totally known for playing fair. I fumed at the memory of him kissing Destiny when she was still my girlfriend. Last time I checked, you were the girlfriend stealer. At least I bothered to find out if she'd actually broken up with you first. No, you hadn't. We weren't broken up. You made it clear that you two were done yesterday morning. We all heard you. I was just mad and done with the conversation. I wasn't breaking up with her. Your loss. You should have been clearer. Isaac grabbed my jacket lapels and jerked me toward him. We were the same height, and I stared levelly into his eyes. His eyes widened. He let go and stepped back. I don't want to fight you. He ran a hand through his hair. But I won't let Destiny go. You think I am? She was mine before you took her from me. Isaac looked away. Well, right now she doesn't want either one of us. Actually, that's not true. She wants us both. But she doesn't see what's best for her at the moment. You've got her so confused she can't tell what's right and what's wrong. But we both know you aren't good for her. She needs to be with a Mormon guy, someone who can give her the future she deserves. If she ends up with you, she'll be giving up everything. If you care about her, you'll do the right thing and leave her alone. Don't tell me what you think I know, Isaac spat. And who put you in charge of what's best for Destiny? Last time I checked, she could decide for herself. Then let her. I gave him a wide smile. Isaac eyed me suspiciously. What are you trying to say? I'm saying give it your best shot. Just know I will never stop trying to keep her away from you. And if the best way to do that is to date her myself, then so be it. A spark lit Isaac's eyes. Are you challenging me? I shrugged. You could say that. You're on, Isaac said. May the best man win. I was confident it would be me.